the Westwood Planning Board meeting. My name is David Atkins. I'm chairing the meeting tonight. We'll start off by introducing the board members and staff by way of a roll call. So we'll just call on Mr. Paff.
Here.
Mr. Gotti.
Here.
Mr. McCusker.
Here.
And the town planner. Abby, you want to introduce yourself? Right. And Jessica Cole is our recording secretary. And Mr. Pat Ahern, town council, I think was off and will be back on. So all meetings of the Westwood Planning Board are recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live on local cable television, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also available on Westwood Media Center YouTube channel and they're live streamed. If you're having any trouble, if you're watching this and having any trouble logging into Zoom, please go to zoom.us, click on Join Meeting, and then enter the meeting ID, which is 863 90 49 94 76, and that would be so that you could speak. So that's the Zoom information, and this meeting is being conducted remotely because of the governor's order that limiting in-person gatherings. All of our meeting votes will be by roll call. While people are unmuted, please turn off your cell phone ringers to eliminate background noise. And we start this meeting with just board members and the planning department staff unmuted and on the video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we will unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to minimize background noise. Just to outline our process, our planning board meetings consist of 3 types of agenda items. We will consider applications that have been submitted to the board, conduct public hearings where there's a public comment portion. We have other applications that are not formal public hearings, and the public will have an opportunity to comment, but at the board's discretion. And then we have administrative items where board members will discuss issues and deal with items like approval of meeting minutes, planning future agendas, and hearing updates from planning department staff and other boards. Prior to each agenda item, the chair will announce the item, may provide some descriptive context, and invite the applicant to come speak. I wanted to ask, is Mr. Ahern on the, yes. So originally this meeting was to include a public hearing on the zoning articles, and then the notice was not printed by the newspaper in time. But the item is still on the agenda. And so what is the difference in terms of if we have people making public comment at all, is there a significant difference between the public hearing that will happen on March 1st and tonight's meeting where there will be a discussion? But I may have spoken too soon.
Or if he's speaking right now, Pat, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
We can also address that when we get to that part of the meeting. I just wanted to, because I know it was just want to make it clear what's happening when we get there.
Right. I'll add. Oh yeah, he's saying. I think he might just be having trouble to get on video, Pat. But yeah, it's not an official public hearing because it didn't. The newspaper has to print it at least 14 days in advance, and there was an error with the newspaper. We sent it to the newspaper, but the newspaper accidentally didn't print it, so we had to do it again. So I recommend you still go through the full thing tonight. You talk about, you discuss it, but the official public hearing will be next week. But this gives you an opportunity, the board, to discuss as a group tonight, hear from people, and that way you can go through the public hearing next week a little more prepared of what you may have expected next week. So at the close of the public hearing, no, sorry, not the close, but at the end of the first night, you'll have to make a recommendation to the Finance and Warrant Commission. So this essentially gives you 2 nights opportunity of 2 nights to be able to talk about it. And that way on March 1st, you'll make your recommendation to the Finance and Warrant Commission. You will usually keep your hearing open throughout, the next several weeks until you get to town meeting. That way you can continue to take input, but you'll have tonight to talk about it, but it's not, that notice didn't make it in 14 days in advance. So that's why we have next week as the official public hearing.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Abby, for describing that. And just to give people, I wanted to give kind of a sense, we have a full agenda tonight. And so that part, the zoning amendment discussion is later in the evening. So I do expect that will be, it'll be several hours from now. But the other items on the agenda, I think some of those, some will go quick and some will be longer. So anyway, just to sort of set an expectation, tonight is not a quick night, but we will work efficiently to move through. So as I mentioned before, all of our votes are by roll call. With that, I will, are there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Nope. All right, then the first item on the agenda is 730 Gay Street. This is a request for the planning board to endorse an approval not required plan for 730 Gay Street. And is there someone here to present that?
Yes, I'm just letting the applicant, I know the project engineer is here. But you had in your, they're just coming in now. Here's Mr. Glossa.
Hi, Mr. Glossa. And
good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So I'm here representing Terrence and Carolyn Connaughton, who are the owners of 730 Gay Street in Westwood. 730 Gay Street is next to the Paul Hanlon School. It's just past it if you're coming up Gay Street from Route 1A. And the zoning there is single residence A, so that requires 90 feet of frontage and 90 feet of lot width for a buildable lot and 12,000 square feet of area. So it's a large lot. It's more than 73,000 square feet. And do you want me to do the screen share, or were you? I'm sorry.
Oh, I can pull it up. I have it right here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about that.
All right.
Okay, so as we're looking at the screen, the Paul Hanlon School would be to the right, and then a single family residence to the left, and then a large piece of land to the rear where the house is actually nowhere near this site. Site's almost across from Pine Lane, and as you can see, it's a large lot. It's about 73,000 square feet. It has plenty of frontage. And again, the zoning requirement, 90 feet of frontage, 90 feet of lot width, 12,000 square feet of area. So the Connaughtons would like to split the lot in half, leaving their existing house on what we've shown as Lot B, which would be 40,344 square feet with 176.59 feet of frontage. And the house location meets all of the zoning requirements for front, side, and rear setback. And then they would be creating a vacant lot, which we show as Lot 2B, which would be 33,495 square feet. It would have 92.08 feet of frontage, the lot width. And I guess you're going to have to trust me on this. I thought that the draftsman put it on there, but that lot is 90 feet back, 90 feet wide, all the way back to the rear, where you can see where it widens out to about 123 feet or so. So that would be a buildable lot. We did have to put an easement around the Connaughton's driveway. I guess that will be worked out with anyone who buys this lot. And you might be able to see there in sort of lighter colors in the front, we did identify from record plans where the sewer, water, and electric lines enter the property so that none of those need easement. They're all staying within the confines of Lot B. So I believe we met the lot shape factors for the zoning for the perimeter in the area. But because there's such large lots, they don't have they're not even close to the shape factor. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I believe that the Connaughtons through this plan have met all the zoning requirements and are asking the board to approve the plan under the approval under the subdivision control law not required. So I guess endorse the plan under the approval under the subdivision control law not required.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Glossa. Any questions, board members? Mr. Paff,
No.
Mr. Gotti?
As Mr. Glossel laid out, meets all the minimums, no additional curb cut. No issue for me.
Mr. McCusker?
No questions from me.
And I don't have any questions either. Could we have would someone like to make a motion to endorse the A&R?
I'll make a motion to endorse the A&R plan submitted for 730 Gay Street.
I'll second that. Okay, go ahead.
All right, motion for Mr. McCusker, second for Mr. Gotti. And we will go through roll call and no further discussion. I'm seeing no further discussion. So Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So we will endorse the approval not required plan. And I believe we need to go down to the police station to sign the wetting.
The Mylar is at the police station. If board members, if you could stop by the police station on your time, on your own time and sign that. And then let me know, if you let me know when after you sign it, that way I'll know when it's done and I'll let the applicant know that it could be picked up.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Great,
Mr.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Nora, for your help with this.
Good luck.
Okay, good night.
Thank you. Abby, do we have any other plans at the police station currently?
No, just that one.
Okay. Want to make sure I'm not missing something.
All right, the second item on the agenda is a public hearing, an EIDR, Environmental Impact Design Review, continued public hearing for 420 Providence Highway. That's the old Porsche Audi dealership off of Route 1. And this was continued from our last meeting. We'll just hand it over to the applicant if they're here to report back on that. They were going to talk about some issues related to the drainage and the, you can just take it from there.
I'm just letting the applicant is coming in now, Mr. Rose and Mr. Mackwell.
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is David Mackwell with Kelly Engineering Group. The update to the planning board is we were successful in obtaining a little bit more information and updating all of the appropriate documents to upload them to the town's website and get them peer reviewed by Beta Group. And everything looks good. We were also able to circle back with Abby on potential draft conditions that she'll share with you. And on behalf of the applicant, I think all of the draft conditions are fine to piggyback on the previous conditions that run with the existing permit. The only other update is that we have not received any feedback on the signage from the zoning board or the building department, and we're going to let the sign company deal with any of those special permits. So I can bring up the slideshow that I put together, or Abby can bring it up if anybody has any questions or answers, and I can let Abby fill in any gaps that I may have missed. I'm going to try to grab that here. Should we share the screen, Abby? What do you think?
Sure, yes, you should be able to do that, I think.
Okay. We're gonna pull up the,
I think he needs to be made co-host, no?
All panelists should be able to share their screen.
Okay, thanks, Erica.
got too many things open to pick from. That's my problem. On which to share. Here we go. I have to put the zoom down, actually. There we go here. Okay. Did I get it shared?
Yep.
All right, great. So just a refresher for the board, the subject site is the old Porsche Audi dealership located at 420 Boston Providence Highway. And subject to the application is to update that site to become a a Mazda dealership. There's a quick photo of what the site looks like today. It wants to get a new skin, new facade, updated look, and become a Mazda dealership. Some of the comments that we had received from the peer review consultant related to some of the architectural plans that didn't have a scale on them. We were able to add all those. I'm just thumbing through those now. So all the documents uploaded to the site have a scale. This sheet here is our site plan, layout and zoning plan to go into the record. The updates that we've made here is we made sure we got the 100-foot wetlands buffer zone on here. And we updated the direction of travel for the for this lane here. And we added the fact that there's actually also do not enter signs already there at the site. Those are the only changes we made for this particular plan. We were able to complete a stormwater management report. The slide I have here is very similar to 2 weeks ago, but we were able to complete an existing conditions stormwater management calculations that demonstrate that the site is in significant compliance with what would be newer regulations for development. The site has ample recharge facilities, water quality components. We were able to also put together a long-term operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater that can be updated into the public record as well, that the applicant will take care of. We were able to get a clean letter back from Beta Group on our stormwater management calculations and operation and maintenance program that we put together. So I think that was the big issue from last time, was making sure that the town was comfortable that we had all the facilities for the stormwater management. I'm just going to put the big slide back up, and through the chairman, I'll turn this back over to the planning board. And if there is any need, we have Joe Rose on here and maybe some other people from our group.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mackwell. And we do have the memo from Beta that reviewed this. Abby, is there anything else from staff we want to bring up, or?
Right. The building department's still reviewing the details of the signage package. I believe there was some revisions recently submitted, so they're just going back and checking the exact amount for what relief, if any, is needed. The applicant is working on that. The building department will let the applicant know, and then if needed, it can file the special permit with the zoning board of appeals. Otherwise, I believe everything that you had requested last time was mostly, as the applicant said, was related to the drainage. And we received that, so we didn't have any outstanding items. So I put together, whenever you're ready, a list of standard conditions for you to review when you're ready.
Right, thanks, Abby. I'll go around and see if there's any questions, and I'll sort of in advance, if there's anyone attending who wants to participate in the public comment part of this, if they could raise their hand or press *9 on the phone. I'm just kind of giving you the advance notice of that. But I'll just go around board here. Mr. Paff, do you have any questions or comments?
Just a question for Abby. Abby, did you see any differences for the operations draft for this and the dealerships across the street? Are they the same?
I mean, they're similar. So the suggested conditions I had were similar to what they are across the street about loading and unloading should be on the premises, not on any, not on the side streets. They have, they're showing at this plan and across the street the directional signage. And then also about one of the suggestions would be no cars, no display vehicles be shown on, on the grass area. They do have one display pad out front on the grass area just south of the driveway. So I think that should be limited to that one location right there that Dave is pointing to on the screen. And then there's a concrete area out in front of the building. So my recommendation would be to make sure that there's always, that those vehicles on that adjacent to the building aren't ever closer than 3 feet. That way there's still pedestrian access available.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were being consistent between all these dealerships that are so close in proximity. No, I have no other questions. I do want to thank the applicant for making the effort with the stormwater management. It gives me comfort knowing that we're operating as we should be, instead of just hoping and praying for the next 20 years or however long, it's occupied by this, by Prime. So I just appreciate you guys taking that on and seeing it through.
Thanks. Mr. Gotti, do you have?
No, just piggybacking on what Chris said, the other thing that I thought was great to have in there, which was new, was your operation and maintenance plan. I thought it was very thorough, so appreciated that as well.
And Mr. McCusker?
No questions from me.
And I don't have any questions either. So Abby, should we go over conditions and kind of remind me, are there any waivers that we need to approve? And then we would have, actually, and is there any public comment? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? That would be in Zoom, if you click the raise hand button, or if you're on the phone, if you press *9. I'm not seeing any. If somebody does want to raise their hand, please do so. We'll check again before the end of this. But Abby, did you want to start going over conditions or?
Sure. Okay, I'll pull them up on the screen too. So in your packet, I would suggest there are 4 waivers that were needed. That's for the exterior lighting plan, showing a full landscape and locus map on the plan submittal, the full traffic study, and the presentation model. And then I suggest 6 conditions of approval. The first one is the applicant is responsible for filing with the Zoning Board of Appeals for any signage relief if needed. Number 2, all loading and unloading of cars shall be on the property and not on those side streets, not on Walper or Purwall Street. Number 3 is about the vehicles, display vehicles only being in the designated spots, and then the ones adjacent to the building to make sure they don't impede pedestrian access and shall maintain 3 feet of clearance at all times. Number 4, that the applicant and owner is responsible for adhering to the stormwater management operation plan that was submitted. That's was updated on February of this year, and that the staff should be trained and records maintained. A copy of this decision shall be kept on the project site at all times. And number 6 is about if there's any changes requested, first they should be received in writing to staff prior to implementation, and they may require coming back to the planning board.
All right, thanks, Abby. So we have request for waivers. I'm seeing no other questions or anything, so would someone like to make a motion to grant the waivers or discuss the waivers?
Did we talk about the exterior lighting plan last time? Or,
There's no, no proposed changes to exterior lighting. The schedule, not the schedule of lighting that is detailed in the previous decisions. And all of the lighting is fairly modern with dark sky. They appear to all be dark sky compliant, and this was reviewed a few years back. And they're not proposing to change or put any new light poles up. That was one of the waivers that we did request, was the lighting plan.
so Abby, to your knowledge, is the existing lighting up to standards?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't been out there in a while in the evenings. I don't know.
I can probably pull up a photo of one of the light poles, but there's certainly shoebox downcasting, not floodlights.
Trying to remind myself what Beta commented on about the lighting plan. If it's sufficient for our needs and obviously the applicants, I don't have a problem with the waiver. I just wanted to revisit that topic and just verify it.
All right, Mr. Mackwell, were you looking to pull something up on the screen, or?
I was seeing if I could find a photo of what the light poles look like. And I can possibly do that. I'm searching our directory now, but as I had said, that was one of the waivers that we had requested to not provide a lighting plan.
So while you're looking at that, Mr. Gotti, did you have anything you wanted to bring up, or
No.
Mr. McCusker, anything from?
No.
And Ms. Conant, I see board member Debbie Conant has joined the call.
Yes,
Did you have any questions on this? So did you get a chance to review?
I did not. I missed the meeting, so I'll abstain from the vote.
Chris, I didn't see anything in any of the materials from Beta.
Yeah,
I
I'm
saw it.
going over it again right now, and I know all they do is identify that a request for a waiver has been asked for for the lighting plan. So,
Okay, if I can, I'm going to try to share the screen again. I pulled up a photo that shows that the existing lights. I do have one. We're disabled, just so we can be happy that we don't have a bunch of floodlights out there. Okay, can we see that one?
Yep.
So you can see there's a pole here. These two point straight down at the parking lot. There's another pole over on this side. These are all shown on the site plan and the survey. And they appear to be all facing directly toward the parking lot, not floodlights. Their schedule of lighting is detailed, I think, for operational hours, and to go to security lighting. I think it was specific hours in the previous conditions that Prime didn't have a problem with.
Is there any lighting on the building itself?
I don't think there is any parking lot lighting on the building. The only lighting on the building itself would be egress code, building code required lighting to light your entrances and exits, which would be the very small lights right above the doors.
Okay. And these parking lot lights, are they halogen, fluorescent, LED? Do you know?
I don't know, to be
Okay.
honest with you.
If I may,
Go ahead, Joe.
they're LED lighting.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Sounds like Joe had to go replace them all, not, a few years ago, huh?
Yeah, we upgraded, I don't know, 3-4 years ago or so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, David, for pulling that up. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'll stop my share now,
Yeah, that's fine.
so we're not staring at the lights.
All right. Can we? Would
Chris,
someone-
just a point of clarity. Sorry, Dave, just one quick point of clarification. I imagine, David, that there is some uplighting or some type of lighting on the branding on the signage package of some sort. So I didn't want to have that possibly be a miss.
I think there is some uplighting on the flag and on, well, I don't know if there's on the flag, but there probably is, to be honest with you. And there are probably some sort of lighting associated with the signage. And that will be reviewed with the Zoning Board of Appeals for consistency with everything else.
Yeah.
But
All right. If there's no other questions, would someone make a motion to related to the waivers?
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver request as indicated for 420 Providence Highway, prime Mazda.
Second.
All right, there's a motion from Mr. Paff, seconded by Mr. McCusker. And I still see there's no public comment. Nobody's raised their hand. So we'll go on to a roll call vote for the waivers. Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
and Ms. Conant, you're abstaining. Okay, and I vote yes as well. So that's a four in favor and 1 abstention on the waivers. On the main approval of the EIDR, is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to approve the EIDR at 420 Providence Highway.
Second.
With the condition.
6 conditions.
With these listed conditions we spoke of earlier.
Second that.
All right, there's a motion. Second, is there any further discussion? And we will have a roll call vote. Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Ms. Conant,
Jane?
abstain, and I vote yes as well. So that passes. This is a public hearing, so to close the public hearing, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 420 Providence Highway.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Roll call, Mr. Paff
Yes.
and Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Ms. Conant,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So the public hearing is closed. And thank you again for filling in the details and following through on the stormwater issues. And good luck.
Thank you very much.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is 25 Clapboardtree Street. This is a request for an amendment to the OSRD special permit, this open space residential district special permit that was approved for the Green Company. And we have a request to modify that tonight. And I believe that we will need to do the initial determination if it's a minor modification. And I think we are assuming that it's not a minor modification, but that's probably procedurally the first thing we need to do.
No, sorry, Dave, if I don't mean to interrupt, but this is a full special permit. It's a new public hearing. So, I've been calling it an amendment, but it's been,
Okay.
gone through the full new public hearing. There's been a new notification to abutters. Then there's been a notice in the newspaper. So it's essentially a full new special permit. It's
So we're-
amending the old, but it's still a new. You don't have to
Right, we
make a
don't,
motion on
We're
being
starting
wrong.
all over.
yeah. All right. So with that said, is Mr. Green here to present this?
I am. I actually am here with two other people, Craig Finn from VHB, our engineer, and then Abby, I'm not seeing Mike Terry, and he's not sure if he's been promoted to a pen.
I just brought him in, so he's on his way in.
Excellent. So we'll wait for him to join because he leads us off. And then if I want to share my screen, is that under more? Oh, I'm sorry, I see share screen. So is it okay to do that?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Mike,
Am I live?
you are.
Alive.
Am I sharing my screen now?
Yes.
You are.
Okay, excellent.
We're seeing the presenter mode as opposed to the full screen mode that you want to show. So you may want to.
Oh,
There you go. I think that's the
it's
one.
over here. No, it's not letting me do that. Let me try it a different way. Is that better? Oh, I
You got
need to share my screen now. Hold on one moment. Sorry, I apologize for my.
New world.
Okay, now I believe I'm sharing.
Looks good.
Okay, Mike, do you want to take us away?
Sure. So briefly, good evening, everyone, Mr. Chairman. Michael Terry from Petrini Associates. So with me, as you know, is Dan Green, president of the Green Company, and Craig Finn, our engineer from VHP. And we are here seeking amendment to a special permit that was granted for the property, which is located at the corner of Clapboardtree and Winter Streets. The original permit, as you may recall, was granted April 23rd, 2019, pursuant to Section 8.3, the Open Space Residential Development Bylaw under the Westwood Bylaw. And it's now the site of the homes at 45 condominium, which is currently under construction. So the permit provided for 40 age-restricted condominium units with a community meeting house on approximately 12 acres. The project is located at the site of the former Westwood Lodge. The condos are all clustered in the middle of the site with 6 40,000 square foot A&R lots and the existing athletic field flanking most of the existing public street frontage. The project provided for the conveyance to the town of that athletic field and a newly created adjacent parking lot to the town, as well as ownership of the group home at 15 Clapboardtree Street, both of which should be conveyed to the town after the May town meeting this year. A walkway has also been constructed for bicycle and pedestrian access to the adjacent temple parking lot, which also connects to a pathway to Buckmaster Pond and beyond, bringing easier access for local families to get to and from the playing fields. The project also provided for 7 affordable units, 5 within the group home, which has been constructed on a lot located at 15 Clapboardtree Street, which is lot 1 under the plan, which will also be conveyed to the town. The first affordable house within the project should be occupied by the end of 2021 in the first quarter of 2022. Project also provided for $10,000 contribution to the town's Affordable Housing Trust Fund for each market unit sold, and a $70,000 contribution to the town's sidewalk fund. As I stated before, construction has begun. There's now 20 or so units either under construction or complete. The proposed amendment that we're bringing you tonight would be to add 3 additional units to be incorporated into the homes at 45 condominium, and these would be constructed on the lot located at 25 Clapboardtree Street, which is adjacent to the group home on what was labeled Lot 2 and at the entrance to the project site. That's my brief summary. I'm going to turn it over now to Craig Finn, our engineer from VHB, and he'll provide you more detail on the engineering portion of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, this is Craig Finn with VHB. Just going to walk you through the amendment and the site plan. First thing I'd like to point out is our yield calculation. The original site design and proposal allowed for yielded a 68 unit OSRD development. With the addition of this lot and adding in that additional area, our yield is now up to 72 units. As Mike stated, the proposal with the new additional units is for only 43 total units. The homes have been located to meet all of the required setbacks, the 40-foot setback from Clapboardtree Street, as well as maintaining a 30-foot setback of the overall OSRD property. The homes are all set a minimum of 20 feet from the internal roadway of Abbey Road that runs through the project site. All the stormwater and drainage for the property and for these additional units will be collected and maintained through a new subsurface infiltration system at the rear of these homes. As part of this, in capturing the driveways and the front yards of the homes, one of the catch basins that was part of the original design site is going to be rerouted to this new subsurface system in the rear to maintain the hydrology of the site and the systems that were previously designed. The other component I'd like to discuss is just a quick touching on traffic. With the addition of these 3 units, comparing the site of the 40 units plus the 1 single family that had originally been contemplated to be constructed out here, with that single family being replaced by these 3 age-restricted units, there's only a 4-trip increase to the project site. And there's no increase in peak hour trips in the morning or in the afternoon. So it's only as I said, it's a 4 new trips, but no new trips during the peak hours. Dan, if you want to go to the next slide, we can take a look at the open space. As required by the OSRD, we have a minimum of 50% open space. The project, with the additional lot and area around the rear of the homes and the side, brings us to just south of 53%, 52.7%, I believe. We are also still within compliance of the maximum 5% of impervious area within that open space. As you can see, the way we've set up the homes, being off of lot 1 to maintain that open space swath buffer of a minimum of 50 feet behind the homes and keep the continuous green belt around the property. We also have a small piece adjacent to Abbey Road and next to Clapboardtree to where we could grab that as well. So I'm going to turn back to Dan to discuss our site plan in a little more detail.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Mike. Can you all see my cursor when I move it on the plan?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I wanted to come back and start off with, why are we doing this? And it really came back to, we realized there's a need in town for more 55+ housing. And we've seen that with the interest that we've had in our community. And so we already have 9 Westwood residents, current residents, that are purchasing from us. 4 people have moved in already, 4 families have moved in and are living in the community already. And we also looked at that and we saw the homes that have been built on Winter Street. And they're beautiful homes. They're $1.5 million+ homes that are what are selling in town these days. But we looked at it relative to our community, and it doesn't have the same look or feel as what we have. And we really wanted to control this because it's the entrance to our community and also how we're viewed by those passing by. And so combining those three things together, we're also a development company. Economically, it made sense too, to put in 3 new homes. And these homes are a little bit smaller than the ones we currently build. They're about 2,000 square feet, a little less actually. And the current homes we're building are 2,300 and 2,400 square feet. And so what we're asking is for these 3 homes and bringing 40,000 square feet into the OSRD so that this will all be part of the same condominium, bound by the same rules and same restrictions. And it will allow 3 more families to move into the community. As we look at these plans, the biggest thing is our utilities. Most of them are going to go into our own road, and these homes are accessed off of our road, Abbey Road here, which is fully constructed. The parking lot that we created for the playing field is also constructed. So you can see that if you go out to the site today. Water comes in from our street. The gas line will go into Clapboardtree Street, and the sewer line will come in to Clapboardtree Street. Electric and cable and telephone will be brought in from a telephone pole on our side of the street and then go underground and into our community. And the main feature to that is that we get to preserve this area right here with a landscape buffer. And I'm going to talk more about that in detail, but I just wanted everyone to see how that happens. There's an underground chamber right here for catching all of the water runoff, the increased runoff. The issue we have is our driveways and walkways and our roof runoff. The roof we could pipe to the back, but with the driveways, we had to catch the runoff that goes into the street, and Craig explained we pick it up here and then shift it into the back so that we're not adding any more to the system that was built for the existing OSRD. Open space, our objective in keeping with the 4-point plan was to provide a green belt around the entire property. And it's truly open space by the definition of the OSRD, except for this area right in here. And that's it. While that is our landscape buffer, it doesn't meet the definition of open space, which is 50 feet in its shortest dimension. So it's running about 40 to 50 feet in that area. I've spoken with all the neighbors. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say all the neighbors. I've spoken with direct abutters who I thought would be impacted by this, which are essentially the folks across the street. And the feedback that I've received is that the group home, the landscaping there is sparser than people like. It feels a bit more commercial than people had anticipated. And they really wondered if there's a way to put in more landscaping to soften that. And so that's what we're putting in as part of our proposal. Another thing we heard is we really don't want to see your homes. No offense to how nice our community is, but can we maintain a thick buffer and augment it? And so what that led to was our landscape plan. And I apologize, the orientation changes. So this is Clapboardtree Street here, our entrance, the playing field parking lot, and our 3 homes. So we have our traditional landscaping, which we put in front of our homes. This is beefed up a little bit more than what we usually do. But to get an idea, you could just drive into the community and you can see what it feels like, because it would be the same feel. These 3 homes are different from what we've been building before. They're single family detached, about 2,000 square feet. And the reason for that is that our other homes are so long, the back of the home would really be right up on the property line. So it would defeat the purpose of open space and keeping our homes away. They actually don't even really fit. It would just be at the 30-foot minimum. And we've built these homes in Plymouth at the Pine Hills, and we've also built them at the Lanterns at Warren Woods and Ashland. So we feel comfortable with them and that they'll meet a market demand. We also thought it was nice that we're stepping down to smaller single family homes from duplexes over here as we come into a more single-family part of the neighborhood and the homes next door. You can see that this buffer, here's the 30-foot line, and that we're maintaining all the trees that are there in that buffer. There is a gas line that comes through right here. And my understanding is that we can keep our cut through that area to about 5 feet wide. It's just the bucket width because it's a 2-inch gas line and it doesn't go very deep. It's either 18 or 24 inches underground. And then there was a sewer line. I'm going to go back in the plan. The sewer line, you can see it comes through just a little corner of the landscape buffer. So in the next iteration, we'll move this manhole up here so that it bypasses, and we're able to save that, and it works with our landscape plan. You can see all of this is landscaping that we're adding to the group home. And so several trees, a bigger green tree, evergreen, and really trying to bring down the scale of it and hide it a little bit more. And we're adding to our tree buffer here, putting in additional plantings. And these are the perimeter plantings that we've done elsewhere on the site, keeping in conformance with that, similar to what we have here. So we also wanted to plant on the playing field side of the street, because that will, as you're driving down the street, that closes in the view you have of the front of our homes. And by expanding the corner here, it's the same as you're driving by. It's harder to see in. It also protects our neighbors over here. So what does this look like? I have three slides just showing the perspective. This is what it would look at installation and for the first early years, I'll call it. Generally, after 3 years, things start to grow in a lot more full. So you can see we have some additional plantings here in the corner. These are obviously existing trees, and that we're putting in street trees. There are some infill trees in here that were according to the plan, and a bunch of evergreens and canopy trees along the group home to soften its impact. And then I'm going to walk down the street. This is from the group home. I'm standing on the edge of the temple parking lot, looking back at the group home. And then these will be the 3 homes that we're building. This is the first one, and that's the second one. And you can see the trees in our entryway. You notice that there's some green space right here. It's town property. If you want us to put landscaping in there and maintain it, we'd love to do it because that will thicken the buffer. We just didn't want to show it because it's not our land at this time, or at any time. And then this is somehow my slide got duplicated. I apologize. This is the view at build out. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the initial view as you're closer up, just looking at our homes and how this landscape buffer will protect the homes from those across the street and as you drive up. And then I wanted to say what it'll look like in 4 to 5 years. And so you can see how much thicker it grows in as the trees come together, and giving you more privacy. These trees have grown in as well. And the trees on the group home, much thicker at preventing the view in. And then the final view of what this buffer will look like just before you turn into the community. So the other part I wanted to talk about was, in addition to this landscaping and keeping this buffer, I think it's important to understand that if it's a single family home that would go in here, we did talk about, and if you look at the homes on Winter Street, 2 of them have driveways that come onto Abbey Road, but the fronts of the homes are facing the frontage streets, Winter Street on that side, and the front of this home would face Clapboardtree Street. One, you need to do it for a 911 issue, but also just in terms of design and protecting the approach to our community. The single family home would be facing here. If you look at the homes on Winter Street, they've saved a couple of tall trees, but they're canopy trees. So none of this buffer would be saved. It would essentially be open. And most people are doing that. They're maximizing their yard space. And so, as counterintuitive as it may sound, from our perspective, we thought putting our condominiums or expanding the condominium to here will actually offer more privacy to the neighbors and those passing by. We talked about, we give a donation now of $10,000 per market rate home to the Affordable Housing Fund for the town. We've given $40,000 to date for that. We're proposing to do $20,000 a home here, so we're doubling it. So that would be $60,000. And we also propose to do $40,000 for the sidewalk on Clapboardtree Street. In talking with the town planner, we found that we know there is a sidewalk here already. It's just a little bit narrower than the current spec. And in lieu of the $40,000 going to that, if it's the planning board's wish, we would much rather put that towards the Affordable Housing Partnership. And those would be direct donations under the same terms we have now. So in going from 20, we'll round up to 30 to, for the $40,000 divided by 3, let's make it $45,000 because math is easier for me that way. So it would be an additional $15,000 a home. So that would go to $35,000 per home. And I think at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions from the commission to see what you think of this and what comments you have for us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you.
Who wants to go? Who would like to speak first? Want to just raise a hand, or Mr. Gotti?
So forgive me, Dan, I'm the one board member who wasn't on at the original approval of the OSRD, so I may have a couple of additional questions.
Thank
Now,
you.
in the original plan,
Yep.
right, you had the 6 A&R lots and the group home, and then you had the OSRD, soccer field, and essentially what was on the right would have been open space to the edge of lot 2. And that created a real nice gateway, if you will, into the community.
Yep.
Now, we received some feedback from neighbors prior to the submission of the landscape plans that I looked at this morning. You mentioned you'd spoken with the neighbors. Did you get any feedback from them on this? Because I'd be very curious to know how they responded to that relative to some of the feedback that we'd received prior to seeing that.
The feedback I received was what was put into the public comment, and then I called to speak with each person, Mr. Hyde and Ms. Aramo. And Ms. Aramo and I went back and forth via text. We did not catch up directly. And her comments were thorough and lengthy. And I think that when I say I heard from them, I don't know her reaction, and I'm sure I will hear it tonight, and I look forward to. But I think that the one thing in her write-up was that if this were a single family home, she assumed that the home would be fronting on Abbey Road. And that is not the case. And we haven't done that with any of them, because you run into a whole issue with condo fees, plowing, and it's not worth it. And then you have the 911 issues. So that home will face the front here.
Right.
So the whole premise that this buffer could stay with a single family home, I don't believe that will be the case.
Right. And so the original plans with the single family homes sort of ringing the development were what made it, based on what was approved back in April of 19, consistent with the neighborhood and single residence C, right?
Yes, exactly. Let me go back to the overall site plan because you can see it here. So these 2 homes are constructed. This is lot 4, this is lot 5. Lot 6, they've just taken down the trees, and I think they're putting in the forms for the foundation. I'm pretty sure they are. So they've dug the basement hole. And you can go by there, and they did save 2 or 3 trees per lot up in the front, but they're big trees, and the canopy sits way above the house. So as you're driving by, you're looking right in, and virtually the entire building area is cleared in these lots, and the perimeter has a little bit of a buffer to the neighbors. And it's similar with lot 6. The added advantage to these homes is that there's room to have some landscaping in the back to act as a visual buffer from Winter Street. So when you look through past the home, you do see some trees. The downside to lot 2 here, where we're talking about doing it, is the treed area is only in the front and a little bit on the side. Oops, sorry, I keep clicking. A little bit on the side here. Unfortunately, this whole back half of it was a parking lot previously, and so it's been cleared, and there are no trees in there. So the green space you were talking about is right along the edge of our walking path, and we augmented landscaping here, and we added a whole bunch here, wrapping around the playing field, trying to create a green space that would essentially say you've arrived at our community. And what we would do in this plan is do the same thing, but we're extending the green space. We'll be replanting and revegetating in the back, and we will wrap it here and keep the thick stand of trees right here. Does that answer the question? Did I go into
It does. And so, you know, I think that the concern as I was reading what was submitted is that is this consistent with the prior judgment of the planning board that it was going to be consistent with, you know, the neighborhood and not impact the neighbors. And so I'm very curious because of all the screening that you're proposing as to how those neighbors are responding to this.
I'm eager to hear that as well. I did want to add one more part, which is the green belt that's right here is not going away. The only thing that's happening is we have to relocate the walking path, which is installed. You can see it goes through the corner of the home. And so it will relocate to here, but we'll move our landscaping around it. So it won't decrease the number of plants in the buffer. And going into your comment, when you look at this plan of what's green and open space by the definition of the OSRD, we've just tried to enclose more of the site by wrapping it with this L-shaped piece.
All right. Who else would like to speak? Ms. Conan, do you have any questions or?
Yes. Could you go back again to tell me what your contributions to the town would be?
Sure. Do you want me to do the original ones as well, or just the new ones?
No, just the new ones.
So the new ones are going to, I guess I need a little direction. Do you want money for the sidewalk fund, or do you want it to all go to affordable housing?
I want to know what you were proposing for the sidewalk and what you were proposing for the homes.
Okay, I proposed $40,000 to build the sidewalk from the Temple parking lot. You can see Temple Road is right here, and rebuild it all the way up to Winter Street. Winter Street is due to be rebuilt, so it would be a contribution to the sidewalk fund, so you could do the work. There's no sense in doing it now and tearing out part of it. And then it would connect to Winter Street. In addition, we would do that extra landscaping at the group home to help protect the neighbors and those driving by. And we would augment the buffer here, and we would augment the buffer here. And on top of that, we proposed $20,000 per market rate home, which is double what we had done for the rest of the community, adding another $60,000 to affordable housing as we build and sell these homes.
Okay. So though I appreciate your desire to help to assist over 55 people to come into the community, we have a situation where it adds 3 more homes to our denominator.
Yep.
And even the amount of money that you're proposing will not provide us the amount of money we would need to purchase an affordable house, in my opinion. And so for your 3 homes that you propose to build, we have to find an affordable home to compensate for those. So that's a situation that we need to look at.
Sure, can I comment on that?
You absolutely may.
So by going from 40 to 43 homes, the 15% factor is still 7 affordable homes. And that's what we have provided. We have 5 in the group home, which I believe have hit the SHI by now. Abby, you would know that.
Yes.
And if they
yes,
haven't, they're
those-
about to.
Those 5 have been added.
And then we have the 2 that we're building, and we'll be closing on the first one at the end of this year or before the end of this year. And the next one will be in the first quarter of 2022. So that will be the 7 homes that will be 15% affordable, whereas what you're trying to achieve is 10% affordable. So we're still ahead of what the 40B proponents or 40B laws require.
Right, but the
Might be
7
included.
was for the original OSRD, and we're adding 3 more, so it's still,
Correct.
we have to still think of it as adding to our denominator. So just a thought we need for that.
And I would love to be able to tell you that I could make one of these affordable, but the economics of it in terms of what the OSRD requires, especially in terms of this underground storage tank, it's hugely expensive. And the permitting process and all of that, it just doesn't allow us to do that. There's not enough return. I'd be better off economically to sell the single family lot.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. McCusker, do you have any?
I just want to clarify what you just said. If this wasn't three condominiums, if say it was reduced to 2, it would not be in your interest to move forward?
We looked at that, especially when we received the comment from Mr. Hyde, and the economics of it, it doesn't allow us. We would be doing all of this for no economic gain at all. And so it would be simpler for us to leave it as it is and just sell the lot and have a single family home there. But as I said before, I really thought when I was proposing it that it would be a benefit to the town, bringing in more of the empty nester folks, as well as providing a better buffer to some of the neighbors. But I won't be hurt either way. I really won't. I love this project. I think it's a fabulous place. I just saw the opportunity to expand it a little bit and bring in 3 more families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Paff?
You've explained why they are smaller units. Can you tell me why they're detached? Why the whole rest of the development share a wall?
Sure. The rest of the homes in the community, while they share a wall, if you look at it, they really don't. See this area where my cursor is?
They share a courtyard?
Yep, that's an outdoor summer room. So it's a roof structure and it's a wall on the front, and on the 2 sides, it's the homes, but on the back, it's completely open to your courtyard. It's like a fake front door. You actually open it, you walk through a little roof structure, and you're in with the dining area and outdoor fire pit and things like that.
But from the street, it kind of has the appearance that they're duplexes.
Exactly. It does look that way.
Where
And
your new proposal are 3 small standalone homes.
right. And you can see just by the shape of this, if I were to pull this over here, it doesn't fit. And if I were to turn it 90 degrees, it completely defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do, which is to save the buffer on the street, on Clapboardtree Street. So what I had to do was essentially find a shallower home. And we don't have any duplexes that I like or anything that we've built in the last 15 years that accomplish that. But we do have these plans that we've built. We know what they look like and we understand it.
Forgive me if they were in the packet. I didn't see an elevation of this. If it was in the packet, I missed it, and I'm sorry.
I don't know if it made it, but here's, this is one of them. This is the home that was farthest from Clapboardtree Street. And so it has a bunch of movement, and it's just a small single family home. And then this is the other home. It has his and her garages. And again, just having the 2-story elevation, it's still 1-floor living, it's 2 bedrooms. And I'm trying to, just giving you a sense of what it would look like. But these homes are 60 feet wide, including the buffer on the sides. So they're not super wide, and they're about 60 feet deep, including the driveway.
And I noted they were about 11 feet apart. Is that?
They are 11 feet apart. The building code requires 10. We're not that precise, so we put in an extra foot. And that way the fire chief is happier.
So this picture represents the middle house and the one closest to Clapboardtree?
Correct. And then you can see the courtyard is in the front, and it's a front yard courtyard. They do have a back patio and a back deck.
And you said 1-story living, right? These
One-story living. Yep.
The
The master bedroom, dining, kitchen are all on the first floor. And on the second floor is a loft space and a guest bedroom for when the grandkids visit or the kids visit.
Okay. No more from me right now.
Let's see, I have a few questions. Remind me what the cost of the homes are, kind of what that is now. I think so the condo ones.
The current ones?
Yes.
The current ones are selling for right around 1.1 million. They started in the 900s. And the market has just, the demand is there. We're also, it sounds super fabulous, and it is, and we're so thankful as developers, but we also have huge cost increase too that counter this. So we've probably ended up a little bit to the better, but not as much as it might sound. With COVID and all the precautions that we have to take, not only have our labor rates gone up, building material costs have more than doubled. So the cost of a 2x4 that used to be $4 is now $8. It's actually more. And we had to increase the cycle time because we're only having one trade in the house at a time in order to be COVID safe, as well as other COVID safety measures. So it takes us closer to 30 weeks to build a home versus the 22 that we were doing before. And all of this adds up. These homes, though, those homes that we've been selling in that $1.1 million range lately, but started at the 900,000 range, those are 2,300 to 2,400 square feet. These homes are, one's 1950, 1960 square feet, and the other's 2015, I believe. So right around 2,000 feet. So I imagine they'll sell for less, probably in the $1 million range or just under.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
hard to believe that that's the value of a home these days.
Yep, so that's good. So that gets to the numbers of, so let me just understand. What I'm feeling is that, we had a really good project here that it kind of, all the pieces came together. We had some very innovative things, and I'm wary of disrupting that. So like kind of if nothing, sort of the default condition is that you have a single family home in that space. And are the other properties already committed? Like you've got the one, the other lots are already committed to be single family homes. Like you're not
Correct.
to come back next week with 3 more or anything.
No, I have, let me go back to the site plan. This home has new owners in it already, and this home is almost complete. They've dug the foundation on this home, so they're starting the construction stage. I don't own these 3 anymore. We have an offer and an acceptance on this lot right here. We have not gone to contract yet, but we're about to any day now. And then we've had offers on this lot, but we turned them down because we really wanted to control what the entrance looked like.
Okay. So
there's no room to say, oh, we're going to come back and do more of this. This is the last one.
So it's all about this one here. And just to clarify earlier, I think you said, so you've got the one single family home there is one option. And if you only did 2, you're saying that's not economically viable for you to only do 2 of the smaller houses there.
I wish it were, or I wish I could just somehow squeeze 2 of my fresco homes in there, but it doesn't work. I can't make it fit.
And then two
Right.
plus an affordable is also not enough.
I lose about $100,000 per affordable home. Just on the sticks and bricks of what it costs versus what I can sell, what I'm allowed to sell it for. So the affordable homes sell for about, I think it's 250 to 275, whereas these other homes are at $1 million to $1.1 million.
So if you had to, I'm sorry to like play these numbers things, but just
No, it's fine.
yeah. So are you better off with like, it sounds like you're better off with 2 than with 2 plus an affordable. Actually, the affordable is going to be worse.
Oh yeah, I can't do that. The affordable is way worse.
And so 3 is, but then with the 3, you're offering basically cash of, for the around like 100,000, like with
105,000 is what I've offered now. But obviously we can talk about that. I have some flexibility to go up. I could go up. $5,000 is easy. $10,000 more per home I'd need to think about, but somewhere in that range, we could do that.
All right. I don't have any other questions at the moment, so I thought it's probably good if we could go to, if anyone else has comment.
I got one more based on the elevations that Dan showed. Those 2 houses that had the his and her garages, does that mean each of those houses would then need 2 driveways out to Abbey Road?
Correct. That is how it works. So when it's so hard to see on this. Right here is one driveway and right here is the other. One driveway and then the other. They're narrower though. So whereas this driveway is twice the width, it's slightly more pavement because people don't quite drive as well. And when the two garage doors are together, you can cheat a little bit and share some of the same space. So while this might be 20 feet wide, I believe each of these is 11.
Okay, thank you.
Something in that. Yeah.
You know what the distance is from that first house on Clapboardtree, that first driveway to the corner of Clapboardtree?
I know that, I don't know exactly. Craig, do you have the ability to scale it right now?
We said it's about 60 feet deep as a house.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more than that, it looks like.
Including the driveway. My memory is that the front right corner is at 55 feet, so 60 feet feels right.
So the reason I asked that is obviously for safety, but you're proposing so much denser buffer landscape. Someone coming around that corner, because of the buffering, is not going to see a car necessarily until the last second if they're backing out at the same time. It's just a thought I had as we were talking about this. So it's just I'm not saying it means anything significant. I'm just saying it's a thought that's occurring to me as we're looking at that.
Sure. Abby, is Craig's microphone?
It's so
Okay.
from the driveway to the edge of Clapboardtree Street is about 78 feet.
And then as far as line of sight and safety, do you have any comment on that?
I don't see it being an issue. Yes, I know there's additional plantings, but I think there'd still be plenty of sight as if someone was coming down, turning into the site. They're going to be slowing down to begin with, and if there's a car backing out, I think there'll still be plenty of time for them to recognize that there's a car coming and to stop.
And then also, if you see my cursor right here, this is the entrance to the parking area or the playing field. So this is actually a little bit farther away. Granted, it's on the other side of the street.
Yeah, and likely no cars will be backing out from that situation. They'll have visibility of cars coming in.
Exactly.
As opposed to someone backing out of their driveway.
Correct. But again, when you look at our landscaping plan, all the items of height are over here and we've kept it low here so you would see who's coming in.
Like I said, it was just something that occurred to me, so I thought I'd bring it up.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to open it up to public comment, and And I'll start with the Q&A, but if there's people who would like to speak, to click the raise hand button or to press star 9 on the phone. So in the Q&A, I'll read the question from Fran Fusco. Back when this project was being approved, we were told condos were to be sold starting at $750,000. How did we get $750,000 to over $1 million?
I gather you want me to answer that?
Yeah, if you could address that.
Sure. So I don't believe, I have no recollection of saying 750 because that wasn't a number for me. I'm not sure where that came from. We didn't know until we got closer to marketing, but still in the permitting process, we talked about homes starting in the 900s. And I think that the first prices were started at about 935 and went up from there. And then over time, what we found with cost increases is that you have to have your costs go up too. And you've seen that everywhere. And the low interest rates, fortunately, make it affordable. But that is the realities of today's marketplace.
Okay, I see 3 hands raised, and I apologize, I didn't see what order they went up in, so I will start at the top of the list. I'll ask if we could recognize Nancy Hyde.
Hi, thank you. Nancy Hyde, 15 Martingale Lane. There are a few things I want to point out. First, I want to say I think any discussion of economic benefits to the town should wait until the proposal is fully assessed and not have that supersede a discussion of the density that's being proposed. I think it would behoove everyone to check on the group home site. I think there's responsibility for landscaping that should go in there separate from any discussion again of the change in the single family lot next door. To the best of my knowledge, it's winter now, so the snow is in the way, but I think the amount of landscaping that was done in the front consisted of a tree that died. All the pre-existing trees and whatever was there were cleared out. So it is really very bare to the street. And I know that's not necessarily what's before you tonight, but it's being linked to what's before you tonight. And I really think it should be a separate issue that the Green Company needs to address regardless. I don't think they've fulfilled what the EIDR required, but others can look into that and see what should be done. As this discussion has gone on, and a lot of this is new compared to what was posted and what might have been sent to us, it seems to be getting worse and worse. To go from 3 curb cuts to now 6 is just one of the issues. And I think it's nice to look at what mature landscaping will look like 5 to 6 years out, 4 to 5 years out, whatever it was. But to start with, it's not going to look anything like that. And this is bringing tremendous density out to Clapboardtree Street, which is very inconsistent with what that street is like. And I think there's a responsibility to make sure that Clapboardtree maintains a certain visual and aesthetic appearance. And unfortunately, a lot of that has been lost with the way the group home ended up looking and how it looks as you drive by. And my comments are no way a negative reflection on having the group home there. It's just how it ended up looking that's problematic. So we really need to be careful with whatever's done with this site. So I stand by what my husband sent in as a letter, that 3 units on this site is just too dense. I don't know, I don't have the economics in front of us. I'll take Mr. Green at his word. But I would think 2 larger single family homes and greater buffer to the street would be better and try to minimize curb cuts, minimize the density of appearance for that site as it's impacting people who look right over it, people who drive by. I just don't think it's consistent with what we all expected early on. And for what it's worth, there are some significant drainage problems in the area these days that we're all experiencing due to heavy rain. So the drainage issue and having, I think, it peer reviewed is extremely important to make sure that it's sufficient for what's going on in the neighborhood. So those are my comments for now, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Ms. Aramo, did you want to speak next?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Marjorie Ramo, 48 Clapboardtree. Just to clarify the communications that were referenced in regard to this, my initial communication about this change was with Mr. Green maybe 4 to 5 months ago. I'm a little COVID sketchy on time right now. But at that time, paraphrasing, he contacted me wanting to know if I'd have any objection to this, stating that he realized I'd be the most impacted. And I stated in response, again, paraphrasing, that I understood why he'd want to make the change, but I would like to point out that when I stated that, I had no idea that it was 3 units being proposed. And that I could, off the top of my head, I didn't see anything that felt really objectionable, but that I would have to actually see plans. That's the only real substantive, by my recollection, conversation that I've had. I never saw those plans. They were filed with you, and that's the first I saw of them. And I feel that this greatly impacts me. I sent in pictures along with what I wrote. Clapboardtree is not a 40-foot way. It's a historic, ancient way, whatever we want to call it. Thus, it's not wide as we would normally expect a roadway to be in town. Then in addition to that, my house is a historic house. I don't think it meets the 40-foot setback. So I'm basically looking over this whole project almost as if I'm in a stadium. And I can see every roof line already that's on the right side of Abbey Way set way back. If this is put in the way proposed, from my second floor, I'm going to be overlooking every roof line for 3 homes. In addition to that, I also, because my house is raised above street elevation, see all of that from my first floor. Then in addition to that, from one section of my house, when I look out the windows, I'm looking straight at the face of the lot along Abbey Way. And I can't imagine seeing 5 driveway cuts and 3 homes. I don't think that a single family home will have a greater impact. I think it will have a much lesser impact on me. Also, just to clarify, my letter did not say that I thought the house would front Abbey. It specifically says that the driveway is from Abbey and that the house itself fronts Clapboardtree. So I think it has a great impact on me. I also think it has a great impact on the town. This project, when it was presented originally in the EIDR, one of the things that was stressed was that although it was dense, that density was pushed far back from the roadways, not visible, and that it was the developer's goals to keep it that way. And if this comes forward, that is not going to be the case any longer. We're going to have, instead of 1 single family home, 3 condominium style multifamilies. And although the pictures, and I've actually been in Pine Hills, do represent decent looking small homes, it's still 3 homes packed into 1 lot. Also, as I pointed out in my writing to you all, although that is a 40,000 square foot lot, much of it is or a piece of it at least, is towards the rear of the lot because of the shape of the lot. And then in addition to that, there's a pathway across the back of the lot. So the whole building area actually available to build is not truly a 40,000 square foot area. And then in addition to that, given all the impacts I feel this has on me, and that I feel that this would have on the overall look of Clapboardtree Street. I did hear Mr. Green say that he wouldn't be hurt either way. And I think that that's a pretty significant comment, because I would be hurt, and I think the town would be hurt as well. And I stood behind this project from the get-go. I could have not done that. I stood behind it because I thought it was a good project for two reasons. One, it protected us from what could happen with the Westwood Lodge site. But then in addition, I really did believe it was a good project. And part of my belief in that is what we were going to have along our ways, meaning our streetways. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Green doesn't like how it has ended up on Winter Street. There is an ability to put deed restrictions into a deed on a single family lot that perhaps could give him some control on this particular lot. And I think that covers everything I want to say at this time. I did write a lot to you all. I hope you all had a chance to look at it. I also do want to add that I agree with Mrs. Hyde about the group home and any landscaping over there being a totally separate issue, which we can address perhaps at some other time. And last but not least, I understand that this would be a contribution to the affordable fund, but I don't think that that outweighs the impact that this is going to have on me or the town, and most especially when I stood by this project and I stood by the group home and I stood by the affordable component, which is something that I support. So I would ask the planning board to have this stand as it was originally approved and not create the impact that I believe that this will create.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. And I meant to ask people to identify themselves, but it's Marjorie Aramo. And I think, did you give your address?
48 Clapboardtree, yes. Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Bailey. And I'll go to the Q&A after this.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan Bailey, 29 Martingale Lane. I live directly behind Marjorie Aramo, who's directly across the street. And I think it's important for me to say at the outset that I am speaking here as a resident and a neighbor. I frequently appear before this board and before the Board of Selectmen and Special Town Council, particularly on the Islington redevelopment and on University Station. This is me speaking as a neighbor and supporting my neighbors. I just want to reinforce pretty much everything that Marjorie had to say. But I want to back up for a minute. This is a great project. And while I'm going to speak in opposition to what's proposed right now, generally, this has really been a huge win for the neighborhood and for the town. Marjorie, Nancy, and I all have friends who have already bought into this project. People are very excited about it. We've got a playing field there that's preserved. Dan has done a really nice job. I understand that this is a tough lot, but the notion of putting 3 single-family homes on a 40,000 square foot lot in a residential district where typically it's 1 single-family home, it just doesn't work. The project was sold as clustering townhouse development in the center of the lot, surrounded by A&R development, 5 or 6 lots on Clapboardtree Street and Winter Streets. That's how the neighborhood viewed it. That's how the neighborhood accepted it. That's because the neighborhood saw what was happening on Clapboardtree Street and Winter Street is very compatible with the neighborhood. So now coming back, as both Marjorie and Nancy mentioned, with 3 single-family houses and 5 curb cuts, within 200, 300 feet of Clapboardtree Street, we really don't think it makes a lot of sense. I don't know, can we go back to the original site plan?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this really shows, what was originally proposed and why I think, there was pretty widespread acceptance of it. There's great single-family residential buffering of the more dense townhome development. And, I hear Dan when he says that he can provide better buffering with some townhouses. I get that. But just the character of having 3 townhouses on that property it's just not consistent with the neighborhood. And I'm going to agree with Marjorie that, yeah, maybe it doesn't provide quite the same degree of landscaping protection that a single family house doesn't provide the same degree of landscaping protection. But it's what we're used to, for lack of a better term, and it's what's happening on Winter Street and further up Clapboardtree Street. So I think that is what we would prefer. If Dan could find a way to have 2 slightly larger single-family residences on that lot, I'll speak for myself, but I think I could probably find a way to support that as long as there are only two curb cuts. But as this is proposed, it's just too dense. It's too dense for this neighborhood, which is a single-family, 40,000 square foot residential neighborhood. I could, as a zoning lawyer, I could talk forever. You all know that. But those are my substantive comments, and I thank you for the opportunity to make them.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Let's see, there's 2 items in the Q&A. I'll just read the Q&A questions in order here from Brennan. The purposes of open space residential development OSRD are as follows. This is from the bylaw, section 8311, to conserve natural, hydrological, and wetlands resources, wildlife habitat, scenic corridors and views, agriculture, horticulture, and forestry operations, cultural resources, and other natural and man-made features of value to the community. Section 8312, to lessen the amount of disturbance to soils, topography, and vegetation. Okay. Not a question there, but just reminding us. The next Q&A is Fran Fusco. It's interesting.
Sorry, it looks like Irene was continuing her question.
I see.
Below.
Okay, thank you. So from Irene, the developer was allowed to carve out the perimeter to create 6 single-family lots, and consequently, these lots are now stripped of nearly all trees and vegetation. The proposal is much too dense and not in keeping with the original proposal. And comment from Fran Fusco. It's interesting that when density concerns over 12 units in Islington were raised, they were dismissed, yet density concerns on Clapboardtree over 3 units seem to have traction. And I don't see any other Q&A items. Are there any other hands raised? Okay, I don't see any other public comment. All right, is there any board members want to weigh in?
I'd love a chance to make a request too after the board members speak.
Well, I'm just going back to what I was, the original thing of, well, I could just really simply, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like this was a great, it's a great project. It sort of found it found the sweet spot. We've had a lot of these kinds of, we've tried to find something that to promote 55, senior housing, and a lot of things have not worked out. And this project seemed to pull together the right elements. So I'm very wary of it changing now to something that breaks that sort of agreement, or that breaks that sort of consensus. To pick up on the impact of the additional units. So I did note that the calculations, it's true that had this been proposed originally, the number of affordable units required wouldn't have been different. However, again, we're changing things, and there's going to be an increase of 2 more units added now. from what we know now. So there, you can't ignore that, that if this was the thing that caused the denominator to go over the line, it's, you have to have a good reason to do that, I think. So that's, is there a hand to Mr. Gotti?
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned that these single family units, the ones on the perimeter, right, are going for an average of like 1.2. And you've got the ones inside the development that are going for 1.1. And so when you talk about 2 not being tenable for you, I'm just curious, you know, why that is. How's that math play out? Because it seems like it may be, it just may not be as lucrative. So I just.
Sure. So first of all, the homes on the perimeter are selling for about 1.6. I think it's 1.5 to 1.7 is the range. And the difference is that they don't have to put their drainage underground like we do. They just have to keep it on their lot. And that's the biggest thing, is the infrastructure required for that. And so when you're talking smaller homes and you still have to build them, you just have to have enough revenue to put that in underground. And then the utilities all come underground for us, whereas at those places they are overhead. But if we were to start doing things overhead, that would change the whole feel of the community. So, and we've committed to that. So it's really that our cost structure is different. And they have more land to kind of lose the water in. They can have it pool and pond in different corners of their lots. We don't have that ability. Ours has to be contained in an underground storage basin that's inspected by DPW, and it's the width of 3 of the homes. Does that address your question?
It does.
Okay. Can I, Mr. Atkins, can I make another comment?
Sure.
The feedback has been enlightening, and usually I'm able to get that before the hearing. And I just wanted to get on tonight's agenda and get on the record and get the feedback. Perhaps it was unwise to do that. My plans came together a little bit late at the end. What I would request, it was very eye-opening to me about single family being not a benefit. And I understand it now. And so I'd like a chance to relook at this, talk to some of the neighbors, and really put on my thinking cap about 2 larger homes and see if there's a way to make that work economically, and changing the orientation of what we do. So if I'm allowed to do that, I would love to ask for a continuance to the next hearing on March 16th, so I'll have some time to talk with everybody.
I think, does that sound reasonable to other board members?
And I also, I'm sorry, I wanted to add one last thing, which is, it never dawned on me the curb cuts. We've built these so many times, but I understand what people are saying. So these are new revelations that I should have found out ahead of time. And I apologize for that.
I think it makes sense if, you know, the feedback is being considered and Dan wants to come back before us on the 16th. It makes sense to continue the hearing till then.
Do we have, are there any other suggestions that will help him to come back with something that'll meet the concerns of everyone? Anyone? Now's a good time to.
No, I can't definitively say 2 and it's in. For me, from my perspective, I won't say that, but I'm happy to revisit it because density is a concern of mine. I forget which resident made the comment that the density, but I agree, the density for this project was promised to be distant from Clapboardtree, and this proposal brings it close. So I appreciate taking another shot at a design that may reduce that density. So I'm happy to continue this till March 16th.
Nora, did you want to, was there something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to make sure that Dan is aware that if you're adding two larger homes, they would still need to be age restricted homes if they're within the OSRD. I just want to make sure that's absolutely clear. Whereas a single family home in an A&R lot does not need to be age restricted.
Correct. We understand that it would still be 2 bedrooms and complying with all of the requirements in the OSRD.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And if this were approved, it would have to be another A&R back into the OSRD, right?
It would.
In the first order of business. Okay.
I see Mike Terry nodding his head, so I believe that would be the first order of business, is to merge it into the condo.
It would have to be incorporated into the OSRD, yes.
There's another comment in the Q&A. Just see Nancy Hyde, thank you, and a comment from Sandra Castadina. What about putting an affordable unit on site rather than a satellite site? Have Mr. Green think about that some more.
I'm not quite understanding the question. Where would the proposal be to?
So if I could clarify, are you saying like make one of the 3 be affordable?
Yeah, that doesn't work economically, unfortunately, because we're only allowed to sell it for $250 to $275. So we actually lose money for every affordable to over $100,000.
And can you remind me, I think you answered this earlier, but why there are 3 separate, why they're single family instead of it being like the other units that were 2 connected?
I couldn't figure a good way to make them fit and still preserve the open space buffer around the entire parcel, because the new parcel would now encompass lot 2. And so our homes are too deep. If you look at, I don't have it up now, but there's not enough distance. They'd be right up on the property line next to the group home. So there would be no green space, and that's counter to what the documents say. It just wouldn't be a good plan. It would be hard to sell. They really don't fit. So I went with homes that we've built that would fit. Not getting into the details of my business, but we're a very structured company in how we build, and we have our whole purchase order system so that we click a go button and the purchase orders go to all the vendors. So it has to be homes that we've built. We can't just pick up a plan and do it. So it has to be something we've done before, or something that we're going to do multiple times, so we can cover the costs of building it, of putting it into our system. So that's why I have to go relook at this and see what else we have that might work.
So you're looking at something that plugs into your set of the tools that you have to work with.
Yeah, we're not a custom builder. We can't. A lot of builders can just pick up a set of plans and they put a foreman on the site and they have the lumberyard do the takeoffs. We're not organized that way. We're very systematic, and you can see that as our site's being built, that a home is starting every other week. And in order to keep that system and have this fit in, it has to be something we're knowledgeable about.
And there was a continuation of Sanders' comments here. I'll just read that to complete. So I'm talking about the affordable unit on site, and not give money to our fund instead. So instead of 60K to affordable housing, make one house affordable. Just that's additional comment.
And I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't afford to. It just doesn't work for us. With the 43 homes, I'm sorry, with the 40 homes that were permitted, we got the 7 affordables by doing the group home for 5 and 2 on site. So there will be 2 homes on site, and the offsite is contiguous with this. It's really almost part of the parcel.
And just to clarify, like I had asked to you said that it would be, you're worse off to have the 3 there with 1 being affordable. You're saying you're better off to just have 2. Like you lose money by building the 3rd affordable.
Right. I mean, that's the nature of the beast as to why it's included. It's that you have many more market rate homes to help cover the cost of that.
And that's even with the money that's, so giving 105,000, so building 3, giving 105K to the town is for you a better deal than building 2 and making one of them affordable.
If, yeah, because the economics of 2 doesn't provide for all the extra work we have to do for infrastructure and underground storage and utilities. I'll look at it again, but I'm not optimistic that that changes.
And I guess, and we're trying to brainstorm here, but I also think that the overwhelming consensus that I heard was that the 3 was a problem, regardless of whether it includes an affordable component.
That's what I was really hearing tonight, is that if we want to be able to include something here into the OSRD, it needs to be 2, preferably a duplex. And that I really did hear clearly, and didn't understand it before, but the density being removed is the key factor in here, regardless of if we have more screening.
Rob, did you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I agree that the duplex was the part of it, Dan. I actually appreciated the fact that as you were bringing density out, you were at least trying to do the single family so that there was a little more continuity with neighborhood, but there was just too much density there. So I'd be interested to see what you come back with as you put on, creative thinking cap, to say, what might you be able to do if it were 2? I mean,
yeah, I think that if I can, I still have to comply with 2 bedrooms, but if I can be creative with that, that's what I need to look at. How do I retrofit some of the existing plans I have in our portfolio so that I could build them and get a bigger economic return to make it worthwhile?
I think we let Dan go do his planning and come back to us on the 16th.
All right, could I get a motion to continue, or Nora?
Sorry, one thing before you continue this. So there is one other issue that has come up that's not a significant issue, but the special permit decision that has contributions made upon the sale of the units, which Dan has already given us $40,000 for the first 4 units that have sold. The way that decision was written, the planning board asked that the funds be donated to the town and placed in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We then learned after the fact that the town doesn't have an official trust fund, and that in order to set one up, they would have to go to town meeting with an article. So the select board have an article request on the town meeting for May, but they have reconsidered how that should be handled and are suggesting that it might be better to donate the funds directly to WAHA, the Westwood Affordable Housing Association. So I would like to ask the board to discuss whether they have any concerns with that, or whether or not they go forward with a change when you meet again in March, whether you would consider just changing that one condition in the special permit in either case, whether you go forward with a change or not, to remove the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and instead have the funds go directly to WAHA.
Can I add to that, Nora?
Sure.
I don't think WAHA had been created when we were approved, and that was the problem.
It existed. We just haven't been, it's been around for a long time. It owns all of the affordable homes in Westwood, but it just hadn't been a format that we had looked at. We had another project at the time, University Station, that was donating money in a similar manner, and we based it on that. But we've been told now by Pam Dukeman in finance that the better way to go would be to have the money directly donated to the Westwood Affordable Housing Associates, and the money that's already been received is being held and then could be transferred in that same regard.
But Nora, what about the fund that was created that was used to buy the houses for WAHA? That's the intention, was to put into that fund.
So that wasn't a fund. I guess that's what happened. So I think there was confusion about whether that had created a separate fund. It hadn't. At the time, the money came from the University Station project, and it was being held in a University Station account, and it was then dedicated for use for affordable housing, but a trust fund was never established. We then heard from the Department of Revenue that going forward, we would not be permitted to hold money on that manner. Going forward, we would have to establish official trust funds. So the the select board doesn't seem to believe there's a reason to set up a trust fund when we already have the Westwood Affordable Housing Associates functioning in this way. So the funds that were set aside from University Station for affordable housing were then transferred by the select board to WAHA, and WAHA spent them to purchase new homes. So this would just cut out the middleman and have the funds go directly from the Green Company to WAHA.
So does that fund, so I remember at town meeting when that fund was created, so it was connected to University Station only, and that's the way it is. But it now it just is not. It can't be used for anything else now, so.
So just to clarify, it wasn't creating a fund at town meeting, it was authorizing expenditure of funds that we had on hand. So there were funds that were, prior to that point in time, in a University Station account. The funds had come from building permit fees associated with University Station, and they would otherwise have been returned to the developers at the conclusion of the project. But we had a negotiated deal with New England Development where those funds, instead of going back to the developer, would be put to use for affordable housing. And the reason that was done was we had concerns about the assisted living units that were there and how they would be counted in the future on a census. So the University Station funds were redirected, and what town meeting did was authorize their use for affordable housing at the discretion of the select board. So the select board were authorized to allow their use for affordable housing, and then subsequent to that town meeting, the select board voted to transfer the funds to WAHA to be used for affordable housing. So the suggestion here is to donate the funds directly to WAHA for affordable housing.
Rob, do you have, go ahead.
I just want to clarify. So essentially what you're asking for, Nora, is in the instance that we are going to modify, if we modify the OSRD, you're just looking for us to change the language in terms of where things are directed.
In that condition. And if you don't modify the OSRD, I'm recommending that you nonetheless make that change. Just change a condition, the special permit, which I don't think Dan would have any concerns with. It doesn't
None
affect.
at all. It actually makes it easier. Just we need to know where to send the money to. And
Just
we're doing
to
it.
clarify what the action was. That's all. Thank you.
Right. And so you don't have to take the vote at tonight's meeting to do that. I think the select board want to know if they should keep the article on or if they should remove the article. And I think they're leaning towards removing it. And if the planning board is leaning toward making that change, then that just gives everyone further clarity.
Is this the only development we have the situation in?
It is.
Right now.
Okay, so this was done historically for the Reynolds Farm. That was a different kind of thing, but money was paid directly to WAHA for every unit that was sold at Reynolds Farm. It was a, what do you call that, in kind or no?
Linkage fee?
Yeah, linkage fees. So that was set up directly. So does anyone, but like you said, we don't need to vote on this tonight. I guess we could take care of it at the next meeting. If that's...
I believe you can, but I think if you could give direction to the select board that you are intending to do this, then they'll be able to remove the warrant article.
That's correct.
Does anyone?
Well, my only question is if we give this money directly to WAHA, now, from what I understand, they use those funds to upkeep all the affordable housing in town. But another side of it, we're trying to raise funds to possibly purchase more affordable housing. Is there any way to delegate which way it goes?
You can.
Does WAHA have only one account?
No.
One for maintenance, one for
they
purchase?
do.
Okay.
They have a linkage account that they use to purchase.
I believe Lou
The
Rizzoli.
language I saw from Nora and Abby was she was recommending you restrict it to purchase one or more additional new houses for affordable.
Which I am fine with, but without specific language, it could get sucked up in just the upkeep of the other
Well,
houses.
they do have a budget, an annual budget for upkeep as well.
The
So
chair
you
of I'm sorry, the chair of the Westwood Housing Authority, Lou Rizzoli, is in the audience and he has his hand raised. He might be able to clarify.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead. Let's recognize Mr. Rizzoli.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't mean to prolong the meeting, but Lou Rizzoli, and I'm chairman of the Westwood Affordable Housing Authority and the Westwood Housing Authority. So, Michael, you're raising a very good question. We get money, or have in the last 2 or 3 budgets, 100,000, 150,000 to go and repair the houses that we have. So the money that we would get for this, we would not look at to in order to go and make repairs to existing housing. We just purchased 2 houses within the last year, and both of the houses, one of them in particular, did need some upkeep. So to purchase a home, and we're looking at it for about 500,000 or so. It's not easy to find those houses in Westwood, but sometimes they need to be, the electric needs to be upgraded, or one of them needed a brand new furnace and so forth. So that, we would hope that could be part of it, but we would have no intention of going to just repair the existing houses.
And that's fine. I appreciate that. I just want to make, I mean, I have no problem with some of this money going to upkeep of the existing houses. I just know moving forward, we're going to have to go forward purchasing other properties.
No, I totally agree. I mean, we've got 4 more that are on the subsidized housing inventory this year, so we're moving along very well.
You're doing a great job, Lou.
Thank you.
Thanks. Did anybody else have a hand raised, or no? All right, Debbie.
I just have a quick question. Is there any way to get maybe some information from Sarah as to which would be the better avenue to go versus the trust or sending it to WAHA?
We could certainly ask her to submit an opinion for your next meeting.
I think that would be helpful, because we don't really know the differentiation between the two in terms of the funding.
Yeah, it sounds good. Because well, yeah. Any further discussion, or?
Well, is there a way we could do this? We could tell the select board that they can remove the article for this upcoming meeting, and we can decide whether to form a trust or to give the payments directly to WAHA.
Well, the article forms the trust. So
You
the
can't-
article
you-
asks town
yeah.
meeting to authorize the formation of a affordable housing trust fund, which Pam Dukeman and the select board don't feel is the appropriate way to go.
Yeah, you can't form a trust, Michael, yourself.
Understood. Okay. So the trust is out the window. It's basically how we're going to get these funds to WAHA.
I'm good with just giving the funds to WAHA. I think we went through this in the past, and I thought there was a trust, but there's not. So if you can give the money to WAHA, then they'll be able to move faster on things when they get something that comes up.
That's precisely it, Dave.
Okay.
All right. So I think at this point we should have a motion to. Nora, have we provided? I think given the idea that we're okay with select board removing that article, because I think the planning board is of the mind that we would change the conditions to have a direct payment to WAHA instead of a trust that hasn't been created.
Yes.
I'm just looking, no one's shaking their head, so we're good. All right, would someone like to make a motion then to continue this public hearing or the special permit application?
I'll make a motion to continue the OSRD public hearing to Tuesday, March the 16th at 7 p.m. here on Zoom.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing. I'm just checking, seeing no one else had their hand raised, and there are no additional Q&A comments.
I see 3 hands raised in the.
They just haven't been lowered yet.
Yeah,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote to continue the public hearing. Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. Path,
Yes.
Ms. Conant,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that this public hearing will be continued to March 16th, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. I really appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you on the 16th.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is 10 Longwood Drive, EIDR minor modification request. Let's see, and is this a public hearing or not? This is if it's a minor modification request, we have to decide on that. So it's not a public hearing yet. Correct, Abby?
Right. And I'm just bringing in the applicants now.
All right, this is, yeah, and Abby, do you want to provide any context or shall we just have them start off?
You can hear from the applicant, but this is essentially a minor modification request. They're asking for 2 requests from you. So you should review both requests. One is for a temporary or partial occupancy, and then another is to modify one of the conditions related to when the assisted living units can be occupied. If you recall, the planning board reviewed this as an EIDR in 2019, and then the zoning board of appeals approved the residential retirement special permit application. However, the way the zoning is written, the planning board is the review authority for the affordability requirement. So the planning board gave their input and recommendation to the zoning board related to the affordability. And in this case, they proposed a group home, so it was off-site, not at the time of the construction that you approved for the 24 assisted living units, but for a group home at 230 High Street. So this request is before you as a modification, and then if you were to approve it, it would also require zoning board modification as well.
All right, with that, let's hear from the applicant.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Johanna Schneider. I'm an attorney at Hemingway & Barnes, and I'm here on behalf of Fox Hill. With me are Heather Sawitsky and Tony Amico from Fox Hill. As Abby said, we were last before this board in September of 2019, at which time you all granted an EIDR approval for an addition to the existing Fox Hill facility, which consists of 24 assisted living units, additional amenity space, and related site work. We received a decision from the ZBA approving the project on November 25th, 2019. Since then, we've been very busy. Construction of the project is well underway, and we're actually expecting it to be substantially complete in May of 2021, so just a few months from now. As Abby said, we're here tonight asking the board to authorize the planning department to sign off on 2 partial temporary certificates of occupancy for the project. The first one that we're seeking is a partial temporary C of O for the first floor of the project, in which new residential amenity spaces will be provided. Particularly given COVID restrictions in Massachusetts, being able to offer these new services and residential amenity spaces will be of tremendous benefit to Fox Hill's existing residents. Substantial completion of this space is anticipated by April 16th. And I just want to note we wouldn't be looking to open until the exterior landscaping component of this work is complete. The second request that we're making of the board tonight is authorization for a partial temporary C of O for the 3rd floor of the project to enable gradual occupancy for up to 12 assisted living residents in the May to June timeframe. As I mentioned in the letter that I sent to the board, operation of these assisted living suites will allow Fox Hill to provide care for frail elders who have significant need for support services. These folks would have a significant increase in their quality of life if we were able to move them over there and to enable them to receive 24/7 care as soon as we're able to do that. Substantial completion of this space is anticipated by April 16th, 2021, and we would like to start moving folks in on or about May 1st, 2021. The second request may require a minor modification of the EIDR permit and certainly subsequent modification of the zoning board's decision. Fox Hill, as Abby mentioned, is fulfilling its affordable housing requirements under section 8.4 of the bylaw via an agreement with Till, who will be operating a 5-unit group home at 230 High Street. Till's project also is well underway. They expect to have their first occupant in place on or about June 30th of 2021. It's a condition of the ZBA's decision that the group home be ready for occupancy prior to the issuance of a C of O for any of the assisted living units in the project. It's not part of this board's EIDR permit, but I understand that the two of them are linked. And so to the extent that we require a minor modification of the EIDR permit and then a recommendation to the planning board, we would ask that the board grant that. And I would just note, it's a very short amount of time left until both of these projects are complete. As I mentioned, the Fox Hill project, there's a lot of need for the amenity space and also, to be able to move residents into the assisted living. So we would really appreciate being able to accelerate that as much as possible.
Thank you. Let's see, who wants, Mrs. Conan, do you have any questions or comments?
In terms of the permit for occupancy prior to the affordability units, I think that that's just, again, is going to be another concern as far as the denominator, and that we really need to be concerned about not having those secured before moving on. And that's where I stand on that one right now. The pool, I understand that completely, but the affordability is an issue.
I would point out it is a very short window of time. We're really talking about 2 residents per month beginning in May. So I'm not sure, Nora, you may have a better sense of, what the numbers look like. But we really are talking about 2 units a month. And as I said, the Till project is expected to be complete and have their first occupant on June 30th.
Did you want me to respond to that as far as?
Yeah, Nora, just to that, and just remind me the whole census connection here. I just thought of this. So have they already counted everything and we're waiting for them to calculate it, or where do we?
That's exactly it. Right. So the counting has been done, but the U.S. Census Bureau is not expected to release the numbers to the state before September at best. And it could be as late as December. And then once the state receives the numbers, then they will have to calculate the new SHI denominators for all of the towns. So it'll be some time yet before we know what our denominator is, but we know exactly what our numerator is. And we know what we need to get to different levels depending on how the units are counted in the census. Our concern is not allowing a single residential unit to come on board that's a special permit unit unless we have a sufficient number of affordable units come on at the same time or prior to that to make sure that we don't fall behind. So that's why the planning board, this special permit was issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals, but they looked to the planning board for an opinion here because they didn't want to have on-site affordable units. In order to have off-site affordable units, that required the planning board to make a recommendation that the off-site units were at least equivalent. The planning board did that, and they recommended that the Till units that were proposed, the 5 group home units, would be at least equivalent if they were offered in perpetuity and if they were established and people were living in them so they could be counted on the SHI prior to the opening of the 24 new assisted living units and 3 new independent units. So that was the planning board's position back when this was approved. They went to the zoning board with that recommendation. The zoning board adopted that recommendation and folded it into its decision. So I don't think anything has changed in that regard. So I understand that if the group home actually is ready in June, 2 months after the assisted living units are ready, that you're right, that isn't that long a time, but it's long enough that we just are opening ourselves up. Until we have those units online, we don't have a way of counting them.
Hi, this is Daphne Kraut-Gordon from Till. Would it be helpful to give you an update or some words from our end as far as the construction and the planning?
Sure.
We are well underway, in case any of you have been by. So the framing is up, and all the contractors and the subs are working diligently. We've had, a little bit of bad weather, but we're hoping that that's behind us now. The only delays that we experienced really was, since many of the people are coming from nursing homes, the people with acquired brain injury and developmental disabilities, there has definitely been a delay in some of the referrals that came to us, but we have all of our referrals and have formally accepted 2 people. So they've been part of our support services for the past 6 months already. So they are probably even more anxious than anybody else to be ready to move in. I don't know whether it would be helpful at all to get an updated letter from the funding source, from the Department of Developmental Services, again guaranteeing that these affordable housing units for 5 individuals will be, they will come through. They'll be occupied in the way that it was planned. If that would assist at all in perhaps giving this 2-month leeway. I can come up with a letter. We have the original letter from the Commissioner of DDS, but I can come up with an updated one, since now people are working diligently to make sure that the 5 individuals will be moving out of nursing homes and into this home.
Excuse me, I have a question. Of the conditions from the ZBA from November of 2019, as the applicant submitted a deed restriction sufficient to maintain 5 affordable housing units in perpetuity at 230 High Street. Has that been done yet?
We have submitted that.
You've submitted it to?
We've submitted it. The conditions of the decision require us to submit to Sarah, Abby, and Pat, and it has gone to them.
It has, and it has not yet been found to be sufficient. So we still have some more work to do on that.
So,
We have not
that
yet
brings me
got-
to my next question. It has not been recorded.
It
It has not been
to my
accepted
knowledge.
by the town.
Okay, and that was to be done within 30 days of the issuance of the special permit, or January 1st, 2020.
Correct.
Well over a year ago.
We've been discussing it for some time, but we've yet to reach an agreement on the language that we feel would make the units perpetual.
So as I understand how things are playing out, they're asking us permission to move in earlier than they agreed to. They haven't figured out something that works with the town for the perpetuity. And if something were to go wrong after these people move into the assisted living and Till doesn't finish or whatever, then we're hanging out there as a town with the numerator and denominator out of sync as we expected.
So this is one of the issues you run into when you don't have straight affordable housing units, when you have a group home. So the project we just discussed before this, the Green Company, the group home came on board long before the first unit received its certificate of occupancy. The group home can't come on board and be eligible for SHI listing until it's not only complete, but the residents have not just been approved, but they've actually moved in. So it's only upon actual occupancy by the residents of the group home that DDS can send a report to the Department of Housing and Community Development in order to have the units determined to be eligible for listing on the SHI. So if you had done straight on-site units, as soon as you get a building permit for those units, they're considered eligible and they're immediately listed. That's not what's happening here, because the group homes, there is a delay. So if the Till home is ready at the end of June, and if the individuals move in sometime in July, and DDS gets information over to DHCD in the end of July or early August, that's when those units get listed. And we're at risk if we're even one day before the units are listed.
Thanks.
I guess I would just like to make clear that we do have 2 separate requests, and we do want to ask the board to please consider those 2 requests separately. The first being for a TCO for the first floor residential amenity space, which will serve existing Foxville residents. And then there is what I understand the more complicated issue about occupancy of the assisted living units.
Thank you, John. That was
You know, we're fully understand that, you know, we would not get a final certificate of occupancy until Till finishes their project and residents do move into that building. You know, we're only asking to get a temporary for one floor and to gradually move in a couple of our residents that are in great need of additional care at this time. We'd really like not to hold up those, you know, 2 to 4 residents in May and June. So, I mean, our request is minimal, and we fully understand that we would not expect any full certificate of occupancy until we've fulfilled all the requirements needed. But we really would, you know, it's been very challenging, not only for Foxville Village, but especially for Till during this COVID situation that hit us a year ago at this time. And I know it was an extreme challenge for Till to get going after they were dealing with COVID within their group homes. And we had challenges as well. But we're just hoping that we can get some little leniency there to allow us to just accept a few of our residents in May and June until the Till project is completed by late June.
Pat, are we less vulnerable?
Rob,
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I would like to echo what Johanna said. We've got 2 requests. Can we deal with one, which I think is going to be relatively easy to deal with? I don't think anybody will have a major issue with granting access to something that is going to be a benefit to the existing residents, right? So
from the town's perspective, there's no concern with allowing access to the amenity areas. They will be fully constructed and ready for C of O before the building commissioner would issue one. And any outdoor areas, landscaping, if it's a conditional C of O, they can come later as well. So we definitely have flexibility there. If the board is willing to make that concession, I would encourage you to allow them to use the lower level amenity area.
So can we deal with that first and then come back to the conversation about the Till and the 3rd floor, please?
If you choose to go that way.
Would you like to just make a motion, Rob, and we'll.
Certainly. I would.
Mr. Chairman, there is a question in the Q&A you may want to deal with.
Thank you, Pat. It's a question from Fran Fusco. If those units are occupied prior to the new affordable being on the SHI, that could cause us a problem. That's what we're saying. Yes. Thank you. Rob, did you want to?
Yeah, let me just get the request here. So I'd like to make a motion to grant the temporary partial certificate of occupancy for the amenity space on the 1st floor at 10 Longwood Drive.
Second that.
All right, and we have a motion and a second. And to clarify, so this would not result in any new units, any new housing units. This is to simply allow the use of the space. So no
residency.
No residence.
That's correct. The project has 27 housing units and it has a pool and a open space area.
It's 24.
24 housing units, and then this first floor space that we're talking about is it's a cafe, it's a pool, and it's common area for.
Did you not build the 3 independent units? You changed the plans because the planning board's approval and the zoning board's approval included 3 independent units as well as the 24.
I don't believe so, Nora. When I was looking back at those just before the hearing, they both say 24 units of assisted living.
So the area that was shown on the plans to be 3 independent units, what is that used for now?
Right now, that's function space.
Okay. So the function space then could be reopened, and then the pool area and the other lower level amenities could be opened if the board chose to grant an earlier C of O.
And I believe the motion that I just made cover that.
I think so.
All right, is there any further discussion? Nope. Then,
Was there a second, Mr. Chairman?
I did second that.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry.
so we'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Gotti
Yes.
and Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
I'm a no.
Ms. Conant,
You're muted.
you're muted.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that's 4 yes, 1 no to grant these temporary C of O for the space, for that space to be used. All right, so
I'd like to ask a question related to the Till project. If we were able to get the other conditions satisfied with regard to what needs to be recorded with the Registry of Deeds, clearly there's some ground to be made up in terms of both the timing, and it seems like we're not on the same page yet with whatever's been submitted. If that were able to be resolved, we're only talking about half of these units and there's a 60-day window. So what is the board's appetite for that relative risk based on what I heard Nora lay out as a timeline? Sounds like at least till September before that's an issue. So there's some buffer there. So I'm just curious as to if those other conditions were satisfied, to Mike's original question, where would people feel about the ability to grant the 12 units?
If they came into compliance with the special permit from the ZBA and EIDR, I'd be fine with it. As long as they're in compliance with both permits.
doesn't the compliance require the town to agree to what they've proposed, though?
That's what I'm
Doesn't require
saying.
us to
Assuming
agree,
that we can
no.
get, I'm sorry, go ahead,
It
Don.
actually doesn't. The way that that condition is drawn, it just requires us to submit the restriction. I'm not saying that we don't have discussion with the town ahead of us to come up with language that is mutually acceptable, but the requirement was the submission of it.
The date, the submission was a requirement by January 3rd, 2020, whatever that date was. That was when the submission was due. The issuance of the certificate of occupancy comes from the building commissioner, and the building commissioner does not issue a certificate of occupancy until the group homes are determined to be eligible for listing on the SHI. So that requires the town to determine that the group home units are eligible and that they are perpetual. And so that's why the town's consensus in that agreement is necessary, for the town to be satisfied that the units are perpetual, and we are not yet satisfied.
And obviously it can't be registered with the county unless we're in agreement, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if we were able to get to a place where we were in agreement on that, Mike, sounds like you're inclined favorably, but it's all contingent on getting to a place where there's an agreement.
Correct.
How do the others feel?
Well, if you reached an agreement, you wouldn't need us to do anything, would you, Nora?
Well, they're still looking to move in before the group home is done.
Yeah, so I think that in order to get a certificate of occupancy issued before the group homes are in, they would need to have the planning board make a recommendation to the zoning board, and the zoning board to allow them to be occupied prior to the listing of those units on the SHI, or the determination of them being eligible. So if there was an agreement with the town that satisfied the town that either the 5 units would be constructed, completed, and occupied by Till and kept occupied by Till in perpetuity, or Fox Hill Village took other steps to ensure that those 5 units were available to the town as affordable units in perpetuity, then we address that part of the condition, but they would still need relief from the zoning board to address the timing part of the condition. And the zoning board will be looking to the planning board for its advice.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me the planning board is the one making the decision here, so it's not, I know we're trying to find a way through this, but it won't be just like the Nora and the town come to agreement or the ZBA takes care of it. It's like we're gonna say yes or no, and then it's gonna go from there. And just the concern I think that people have is that if something goes wrong, we had the opportunity to hold the line or whatever. So I mean, I want to do something to be helpful here. We're talking about people that are, it's a small number of people being moved over and make their life better. But how do other board members feel about this?
I'm willing to try to work towards something, but I'm still uncomfortable with the reverse timing. But I'm willing to try. I just don't know if we're there yet, given that we haven't solved the perpetuity. And I know it's been said that all they had to do was submit it. But I don't know, I'm having some trouble with establishing a precedent. I know we're trying to work this one problem, but it's always been our practice. And I know we're being asked to make a change from that practice. I haven't been made comfortable yet that change is not going to hurt the town somehow, some way, or expose the town somehow, some way. Those are my thoughts right now.
If the language, if there could be satisfaction on both sides, is there something that Till could provide that would give the assurance that you're looking for? I mean, they're two separate issues. The satisfaction of the language is really not contingent on your comfort zone to be able to allow people to move in before the affordability part is met. Is there anything I can provide to assure you that that will happen?
I think it's just, I'm not saying I can't get there, but I think it's just the inherent reversal of the chain of events that we intended when the decision was issued. I mean, it was issued that way for a reason, and it gave the town comfort that it was covered in this situation for a number of different things. So now we're asking to reverse that, albeit for just a couple months, presumably. But it just, I don't know. Like I said, I'm upset that we haven't got to that point in over 2 years or whatever of figuring this Rubik's Cube out of the perpetuity thing. I don't know why that can't be hammered out sooner, but that isn't the whole issue here. But it is a component of why I'm concerned about just saying yes and hoping things work, because they haven't worked so far, and at least in this regard of working together and coming up with a solution. So I don't like writing a blank check. We didn't do it on the decision. I'm not overly confident doing it right now. So.
Well, we understand that, and and again, the intent was not to put the town or the board in a difficult position, and we apologize if there's discomfort with the request. We're not trying to skirt our obligations. We're really just trying to provide housing that will be physically available within the next couple of months to folks who are in dire need of the services that it will provide. But we're not trying to end run anything. We're not trying to again put the town or the board in an awkward position. What I'm hearing at least a couple of the board members say is that you might feel differently if we are able to execute and record a decision with the town that memorializes the terms as laid out in the two decisions, really in the zoning board's decision with the recommendation of the planning board. as I said, we have submitted a draft. We're waiting for comments back from the town, which we've not received yet on the most recent draft that we submitted. So I think, and my client may kill me for this, I would suggest that perhaps we request a continuance of this matter so that we can await commentary from the town on our most recent draft decision. And Pat, you're welcome to contact me directly if you want to about the terms in it. And once we have that hammered out, perhaps we could revisit this issue.
One other thing with that, Daphne offered, is there anything else that she can provide in terms of assurances relative to their June 30th potential occupancy? I think, Chris, that's what you're highlighting as your concern, is that 60 days is 60 days today. We don't know whether or not they'll meet it. What's the probability of that, and what risk does that create for us?
Yeah, and I'm all for working the problem, but it does put us in a bit of a situation for future projects. And again, I'm not saying future projects determine this project, but we have a process for a reason. So there's a number of things that are kind of melding together to give me some discomfort on just saying yes on this. And they're all kind of coming together at once. And one is the failure to come up with a solution for the last couple of years since this decision was first issued on the perpetuity issue. And the other is, maybe Daphne can speak to this. What happens if something happens to the Till project and it doesn't get finished for whatever reason? And the town we're out there, we're hanging out there. I mean, that's why the order was what it was, so that we're not hanging out there. We're trying to protect the town. And I know you're looking for a little bit of lenience here for a couple of months, but we're trying to look at the bigger picture. It might not be just a couple of months. Things happen.
I guess let me just point out that what we are asking for is a temporary certificate of occupancy. And obviously we never would want to be in a position where our residents move into these units and then have to be displaced. But if, the Till project, for example, were never able to be completed or occupied, Daphne, sorry, and not that I contemplate any set of circumstances under which that would happen, it is a temporary certificate of occupancy. It could be revoked.
Well, I think the issue for those of us who have discomfort with this is, it's not about temporary occupancy. It's just that there's a risk that the town feels is very significant, and that we are ultimately going to be on the hook for making this decision. And so, again, we don't think there's any bad motives here.
No, not at all. I don't think that's the case.
No, it's the outcome of, if you build the units on site, it's a lot easier to control things. So then having the exception of doing it off site introduces additional complexities and problems and possible delays. And so this is kind of the consequence of that. And I think it's fine if I would say if you're able to come to agreement with the town, then certainly we can reconsider it. We are not on a timetable tonight where this dies if we don't approve it or something. Like, this is not a public hearing and all. So I think it's reasonable to see if town council and all, if they can get behind an alternative. It's also just how far away are we from this, or could you just get it done, just get it occupied, and the problem would then be not occupied, but get the group home ready, and then it would be it could all be resolved before having to come up with an agreement that's complicated. I don't know, but I think it doesn't seem like we're ready tonight to approve the second item here. And what action, Deb, do you have anything to add, or?
No, Nora, I just wanted to clarify with you, even if we had a recorded decision, the home has to be occupied, correct, before it can be listed?
That's right. It has to be occupied, and then DDS has to send a report to the housing department, and they have to say that it's eligible for listing on the SHI, and that can take up to a month. So there's time here. That's, the construction order, Till was delayed. Unfortunately, they were delayed longer than Fox Hill Village, and Fox Hill Village is ready to move sooner. I'd also like to just point out one thing from a practical standpoint. When our building commissioner issues a conditional temporary C of O, the conditions are supported by the potential for fines. The certificate of occupancy is not revoked if you don't meet the conditions. Fines come into play. So we would not get in a situation, we wouldn't want to let ourselves get in a situation where we allowed someone to move in a home and then evicted them from the home. So that's not a condition we're looking at. If a temporary certificate of occupancy is ever issued, like it'll be issued for the amenity area, that'll be issued assuming that everything else goes forward and falls into line and is corrected. And if it doesn't, at the end of the time frame on that temporary certificate of occupancy, fines will accrue. But we're not kicking people out. That's not a position that the building commissioner wants to be in, especially not with residents.
Just a point of clarification as far as the group home. It's really a much bigger picture in terms of the requirement, the expectation, and the absolute need that can't be varied for individuals to move out of nursing homes who are eligible to move into this house. It's part of a judicial settlement agreement with the state when they mark particular people to go into a TIL home or another agency's home. There's no leeway. They have to leave. There are very strict timelines as to when people have to leave, so that it isn't simply opening up a group home with perhaps some of our other 58 or 60 homes that we have, where there's timeline expectations, but there isn't the weight of the law behind you and a settlement agreement that has to be complied with. So 5 people who are eligible for the settlement agreement are going to move in. The other thing, and I certainly understand your concern, and it's too bad that there are the 2 issues coming together. It's hard to separate them, but I don't think we have to worry too much about setting precedent, because this has been an unprecedented 12 months, and probably in our lifetime we won't find it again. So delays that were simply not in everybody's expectation have happened that we never would have dreamed of. And as I said, I don't think it'll be happening again.
All right. Well, thank you. So let's to decide what to do here. We don't need to like continue, because we could always bring something back. So we don't formally need to make a continuance. We could vote to do what's requested. Should I poll people here to get a sense of that, or what?
I don't think
the applicant is agreeable to it. I'd prefer them to try to work on it the next couple of weeks till our 16th meeting and see if that's enough time. I don't know, but that would
procedurally, and we are certainly more than willing and certainly prepared to try to continue to work through all of these issues, and also, to talk with Till to see if there are any additional forms of comfort we might be able to provide the board with respect to Till's progress and projected occupancy timeframe. I guess the question is, since it was not a public hearing, we don't need a continuance. I'm not even sure that we need to withdraw the request. I think it maybe is just, we will send a follow-up letter as we did with this, restating the request in a few weeks' time if we're in a position to do that.
I think that sounds good.
Pat, is the 16th enough time for
We'll
you?
work hard towards it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming and presenting this. Is there anything else that we want to go over on this item, or we'll just look forward to hearing some progress in a couple of weeks? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
David.
Thank you. All right. So the next item on our agenda is zoning amendment discussion, preparation for the public hearing on March 1st. So as we stated earlier, tonight is not the public hearing, but we'd like to hear, we'll go over these basically.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a point of order? I was having difficult getting on, but I did hear Abby's explanation. As long as these were properly posted and the agenda was properly posted, you can talk about these items. It would not suffice for your public hearing. You're still going to have to follow the rules for a public hearing, but you can have a discussion tonight about this as long as your agenda was properly posted and noticed. So that would be my position.
Right, thank you, Pat. And so as earlier we were saying, it's basically we have two nights to talk about it. So it's additional opportunity to discuss this and vet it more.
And years ago, as I recall, the planning board would have an informal discussion night very early on in the process. So there is some precedent to having a discussion just amongst yourselves.
All right. Well, and I think we have some people here tonight who were involved in working on these items too. So it will be more of a informal discussion to get everyone's input. And I think that if the board is agreeable, we would allow some public questions and comment as well as they come up, because we have an opportunity to do that. Let's do it. So let's just go through them in order that we have them here. Let's hear about the zoning. So this is the fifth item on the agenda. The first, there are 5 articles. The first one is zoning map amendments related to town-owned property on High Street in the vicinity of the Obed Baker House. And I would say that we did receive the text of this at our last meeting. I believe it was in the materials, but we didn't discuss it at all. So this is really kind of the first time the board has reviewed this discussion about Obed Baker. So I think, Nora, did you want to?
Sure, I can give you a little more information on that. So the town put out an RFP and we received one proposal, actually just about a year ago, from Todd Sullivan. And Todd Sullivan had included 4 options for what he might want to do with the property to be reviewed by the select board in determining whether they accept the proposal and whether they'll go to town meeting and ask for disposition of the land. So there are several different options that he was considering. I actually have a meeting with Todd on Thursday and with several members of a working group that are going to make a recommendation to the select board on his proposal. He's now narrowed it down to a single proposal, and that proposal seems like it would work best under the upper story residential overlay district. So the proposal at this point looks like it will end up being option 4 under that draft bylaw amendment. I'll know for sure by the time of your actual hearing next week, but as of today, it looks like Todd is looking to request option 4. So that would allow, that would require having lot 43, which is the vacant lot next to the Obed Baker House, having that zone changed from single residency to local business A, and then imposing the upper story residential overlay district over both of the lots. The way that would be done, the upper story residential overlay district now goes from Barlow Street to Gay Street, covering any town-owned building, either town-owned at the time that the bylaw was written or town-owned at the time the town is considering selling the property. And it would change instead of going from Barlow to Gay Street, it would go from Barlow to Church Street. So it would take in the full length of High Street, but it would only apply to town-owned properties in that area. What that would do is it would allow for the Obed Baker House to be converted to a commercial use on the first floor and a residential use on the upper level. Todd is also interested in converting the barn that's behind the Obed Baker House, and his proposal would include the sale by the town of both properties. It's one lot, but both buildings, and they would both have first floor commercial use, and then upper stories would be added for residential use. So I don't have all the specifics of the proposal yet. The presentation has yet to be made. So we're expecting that on Thursday to the working group, and then subsequent to that to the select board.
All right, thanks, Nora. I mean, are there any questions initially from board members? Anyone want to jump in? I have a lot of thoughts, but anybody else want to?
Nora, I have a quick question. How many town-owned properties are in that area?
The only other town-owned property, well, in the area that already exists, the only other town-owned properties are the High Street Fire Station is in the area between Barlow and Gay Street. And then in the area that we would expand it between Gay Street and Church Street, the only town-owned property I can identify there is the Thurston Middle School. So Thurston Middle School and the Obed Baker House are the only properties I see that would be added. But the language says that it owned by the town at the time of approval of the ordinance, or owned by the town at the time of offering for sale. So I suppose if the town purchased another property, that would be a concern as well. I don't see that happening, but that would be allowed within the bylaw.
Thank you.
This, it seems very ambiguous as to what's being proposed here. And why wouldn't we just define the zoning in a way that simply allows for more opportunities for the RFP? Like, I'm not like why, or it sounds like we are going to craft the zoning to meet a specific proposal. Does that?
Yeah, so that was the intention of the RFP. The RFP, this is the third time we went out for an RFP on this property. The Obed Baker House has been a town property for many years, and the town has tried several different avenues for seeing it redeveloped. And this is the third time we've had a request for proposals, and this request we left completely open-ended and let all the interested parties know that they would have an opportunity to recommend a proposal that they thought would make for a worthwhile reuse and renovation of the property. And we would, if the select board found that to be an acceptable proposal, they would take it to town meeting along with a request for a zone change. So we set the article more than a year ago, before we even went out with the RFP, for the various options, and then waited to get a developer on board to pursue one of those options. Unfortunately, with the timing due to the pandemic, this was also a project that got delayed, and Todd is only now putting together the final proposal and only now identifying which of the options make the most sense for him. I will say that if the interest is in having the upper story residential overlay district on that property, but not continue the length of High Street, then there would be another way of amending it as well. So the way that bylaw was written, and I'll say that bylaw predated the FMUOD districts. That bylaw was intentionally broad. If the board feels it's not necessary to be that broad, the bylaw can be changed to identify specific parcels. The only one currently developed under the upper story residential overlay district is the Colburn School Building. So if the board was interested in amending that zoning bylaw to make it much more specific, to include just the Obed Baker House and the Colburn School Building, that's another option. So I think that's something you want to discuss when you actually have your hearing session and see how people feel about it, and which way you want to go. And by then I'll actually have a proposal to show you from Todd about what it is he specifically wants to do on this property.
How do other board members feel? I'm having a hard time like seeing how we're going to put this out there, because it's so like it's very complicated and we haven't had a lot of time to review it, and that usually is a recipe for trouble. But
when are you meeting again, Nora?
We're meeting on Thursday afternoon. So that's a
Nora,
meeting of
who's
the
in-
working group. They would prepare a recommendation to the select board. The select board won't meet until after you
Nora,
have
who's
the
in your
zoning.
working group?
Who's in it?
Hmm.
Chris Coleman, Abby McCabe, Sarah Bouchard, Karen Catroni, Todd Corchin, and Brendan Ryan.
Abby, were you just raising your hand for
yeah.
being in the group? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Something I'd have to think about. I like being specific, but at the same time, I don't want to hem ourselves in. It's something I have to sit and read into and think about.
So at your hearing, you would have a specific request. It won't be the 4-part article by the time of your hearing. It will be narrowed down to one request. And I believe that would be option 4.
And then we have one night to debate.
Hash it out.
You do, right? Well, you have one night to decide if you're
If we're good with
considering
that.
recommending it to the
forward.
FinCom, and then more time to discuss it with the FinCom and decide if it's something you want to go forward with. And then if it is something you want to go forward with, you would then have the opportunity then to review the application from the developer.
All right, well, I think we have March 1st. We'll see what comes up on March 1st then, because I can't really think of much feedback to provide here.
Hey, Nora, you said the only town-owned property between Barlow and Church appears to be Thurston, right?
Yes.
How would that potentially impact Deerfield? Or would it not be included in that?
It would not impact Deerfield because the way the upper story residential development bylaws worded, it's properties fronting on High Street owned by the town that are being offered for this commercial mixed-use development.
Okay.
There's a question in the Q&A. How many units of residential is Todd Sullivan proposing?
I don't know yet, at least 2. So I know at least 1 in each building. There could be more in the barn building. I'm waiting to see his plans.
Nora, does that include the schoolhouse too there, that one-room schoolhouse next to the Thurston?
No.
So the one-room schoolhouse is actually on the same property as Thurston, but it's leased to the Historical Society for, I think, a 99-year lease. So I
And I think
don't
it's-
think I'd consider that eligible.
I think it's $1 a year.
Yeah. So I think because that, I don't think we'd have the ability with a long-term lease to offer that property for sale, but it is on it. The building does sit on town-owned land.
All right. And let's, if there's no other questions about this item, the second article listed here is zoning amendment relative to temporary structures and uses. So this was the one recommended by the building department. Do we have everyone, is everyone familiar with that, or Abby, do you want to?
Right. So this one just allows an opportunity. You had the exact language in your packet. This allows request for uses less than 6 months to apply directly to the building commissioner for a building permit rather than going through the zoning board special permit process. And we included language that, you know, it would require the permit from the building commissioner, and then no more than 1 extension, so that any approvals for any temporary uses or structures could never exceed 1 year. So the purpose was to allow a process for short-term uses or structures without going through the zoning board process, which is usually 3 or 4 months long.
All right, are there any questions about that one?
The building commissioner was fine with the one-time extension?
Yes.
And I remember we talked about that. I just never heard back from him. Okay.
All right, the next article, the third one here, is about firearms sales. This was to change the, to limit the sale of firearms to the industrial zone, so taking it out of local business A and local business B. I don't think anything has changed about that. Are there any questions on that? I'm not seeing any questions on that. Let's see. So then the fourth item, well, we can also, the fifth article is a housekeeping article. Do we have anything? Are there any, is there anything on that, or?
Yeah, we have just like a couple. We noticed some renumbering and wording changes.
Okay. All right, so the other one is Article 4, and I believe that some people from the advisory group are attending the call tonight, and so it'd be helpful perhaps, Abby, if you could just give a quick review of the medical, what the medical news article's about, and then let's hear from people that were involved in that, working on the advisory group, and just kind of the things they would like to, what their perspective is, and I think we might have some other people here that are directly affected, and then if there's public comment, we can have that too. So Abby, why don't you start off?
Sure.
Rob or Chris, if you want to jump in to talk about it, sure.
Right. So you've had a medical use related zoning article proposed a few times in the past, but it hasn't gone all the way through. Approval hasn't been completed. In 2017, it received town meeting approval, but then was thrown out by the Attorney General. So in the fall, I convened a working group and an advisory panel of several different residents. So we have a couple residents. I know Chris and Rob from the Planning Board were on, and then we have Patrick here tonight and Jim Elcock. Thank you for attending. I know we had a couple others on earlier, but I think they just said this was too late for them. So they've been invited back next week on Monday the 1st, where your meeting will start at 7. But I know a couple others were on earlier and they just said they're sorry, they had to go to bed. But so I think Rob was gonna go through the presentation to talk a little bit of how the working group came to this proposed article that you have in front of you tonight that talks about the various medical uses, and the goal was to zone for these uses that were not clearly defined or not clearly regulated in the zoning bylaw currently.
So I know, I'm just going to share my screen. I know that, you know, obviously several of us have been through this before, but there's a number of people on here who'll be hearing this for the first time. So I'm going to share the screen and put it into presentation mode here. Can you see, which screen are you seeing here? Are you seeing my presenter screen or are you seeing the large screen?
I think it's a large screen.
Okay, good. Is it filling the entire page?
Oh, no, I can see all the slides at the bottom.
Yeah, that's, hold on, let me stop that for a second and flip it. Let me put this into sharing and we'll do this. How's that?
That's bigger.
That's bigger. Okay, good. So just by way of background, Abby was talking about the group that was convened, you know, and we really started from the beginning, because a lot of these people are coming into this, they're not deep in the weeds on it. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page. So we talked about a number of things, starting with, you know, zoning in Westwood. What does it mean? Some key concepts around it. 2 errors of medical use, sort of pre and post University Station. We took a look at, you know, the current zoning map and defined uses and some of the overlay districts. We took a look at some of the gaps that existed that were sort of byproducts of the pre-post University Station. We talked about the need to do this because of the protected classes under Mass General Law 40A. And then we got into the meat of the discussion as a working group. And we had a fairly robust group I'll tell you about, and how we approached the discussion that led to the ultimate recommendation. So overall, zoning in Westwood is kind of like the 3-branch system of checks and balances we have. We have the planning board that creates and carries out policy. We create the zoning recommendations like this warrant article that are brought up for adoption at town meeting, and we hear and rule on special permits. The zoning board of appeal, they're the judge. They adjudicate the appeals related to any zoning where it's not clear and then is challenged. And then Abby and the building commissioner are the executive branch. They're the ones that enforce the existing regulations and any special permits or variances that are approved. So, you know, key to all this is we want to be able to retain control. And zoning is really a proactive planning tool to protect and preserve the town while allowing us to improve. We define how and where property may be used, or how property may be used and where those defined uses may locate. The other thing is really that absence of a zone being specified does not mean that it can't locate in town. In fact, if something is, you know, defined but doesn't have a specific zone, it can go anywhere. So that notion was key to this article. When we talk about 2 errors, there's really, you know, pre-University Station, where we had a simple single definition of office of doctor or dentist, not a resident on premise. After University Station, we had 3 definitions. We had that same office of doctor or dentist, not a resident on premise. We had an office of a healthcare professional, and we had medical center or clinic. Now, this working group was comprised of, Patrick and Jim are both here, Abby, myself, Chris, and folks from other neighborhoods as well. We had Islington, East Street, Downey, University Station, Martha Jones Sheehan area, and High Street. Then we had a really diverse group from an experience standpoint that led to rich conversation. We had individuals from public safety, we had a nurse, we had a mental health professional, we had individuals who were involved in commercial real estate, other business perspectives, as well as people experienced in zoning. So we assessed the need, right? We said, okay, what are the current definitions and where are things allowed? We reviewed the interpretations of Mass General Law 40 and protected classes. And then we had the conversation, do we want to be able to retain control as it relates to that? Are there areas where the medical uses that we're talking about simply shouldn't be allowed? What are the options that remain coming out of that? And are there other considerations that we need to take into account when having the discussion of where things should be proposed? And then based on all of that, which options made the most sense? And that led to the recommendations that you see at the end of this. So starting here, this is just our base map perimeter of Westwood. When you look, most of our land mass is really residential. Residential A through E and special residence and general residence all fill in the map. When you strip those away and you look at what is left as non-residential uses, there's not a great deal of land mass for that. And then that's what has necessitated over the years the creation of the mixed use overlays. So when we say what makes Westwood different from other towns, our highway and train access and relative ease of Boston certainly are appealing. The Brigham and Women's Medical Center at University Station certainly raised the community profile. And the 2013 zoning amendments for University Station introduced some new definitions, such as the medical center or clinic. Now, in those definitions, they specifically excluded hospital and substance rehabilitation treatment facilities, which created definitions, because that is what essentially opened Pandora's box, because you now had definitions created, but you didn't have any places where those things were specifically allowed. Now, when it comes to something like drug treatment facilities, Mass General 40A, Section 3 says towns cannot discriminate against a disabled person. And in, I believe it was a March 2019 letter from special counsel, the belief was that this would be ruled as a protected class. So that meant we had to deal with this. We had to find a place to put it. So, we have a variety of things. We have some undefined uses with designated zones. We have office of doctor or dentist. That's not a resident on premise. That's not currently defined in the definition section of the zoning bylaw, but it's in the table of use chart. And so that needs to be addressed. We have defined uses without designated zones, right? We have the office of healthcare professional. It's defined in the definition section, but it's the table of use charts doesn't specify where it is and is not allowed. And then the medical center or clinic is defined in the definition table, but doesn't specify where this higher intensity medical use is and is not allowed. So when we talk about undefined uses without designated zones, right? Hospitals are not defined in the definition section, but they were defined as things that could not be permitted at University Station. Same with substance rehabilitation and treatment facility. And Abby, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, but now what we were proposing is creating greater clarity and in one case consolidation of terms for a cleaner definition, and then an easier placement within the zoning table in terms of where the uses are allowed. So currently we've got the office of doctor or dentist and not a resident on premise, and we've got the office of healthcare professional. We're talking about consolidating those two into a single definition of office of a healthcare professional. Then there's the medical center or clinic, and we have some of these other definitions that we want to be more specific about so we can control where we want to see those things placed. So we're taking medical center or clinic and blowing it out into 3 definitions: the medical center or clinic, a hospital, and a substance rehabilitation treatment facility. And those have specific definitions within them. So we talked about, do we want to retain control? And there was universal agreement that yes, we want to retain control of where these uses could be allowed. Are there places where we wouldn't want to see those? And there was a lot of discussion around excluding that from residential districts, right? So that left our non-residential zones. And we had some additional conversation around the considerations of the tax rate, the need to preserve our commercial residential split, the nonprofit impact, and some of the things related to pilot agreements. As we sort of winnowed that conversation, it became clear that sort of University Station and the ARO at Louderbrook were the 2 most likely places for these to be zoned with an overlay district. So after a lot of discussion with the group, and we came to the recommendation that I'm going to show you here in a summary that created a medical facilities overlay district in the Louderbrook Longwood Drive area that would allow hospitals and substance treatment facilities only by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals in this newly created overlay district. And then medical centers and clinics would be allowed only in the University Station district, subject to the existing master development plan, and would need planning board approval. There's several slides that have the actual proposed language. I think that's out on the meeting, right? Abby, do you want to go through those slides, or
Maybe, yeah, we had all the materials before, unless there's questions from board members. I'd like to hear from the other folks here that have been patiently waiting for hours.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to stop sharing my screen then, Dave.
So some of the folks who were on the, who worked on
This
this.
is, this is Patrick Gallagher, down in University Station, and I am one of the persons who's never been in the weeds in one of these type of panels. So it was interesting. The group took a lot of time to educate us that were on the working group, which really appreciated, to learn about what would be best for the town. And there was a lot of vibrant discussion around the different options and different ideas. But I think at the end of the day, this is really well vetted in terms of impact on traffic, on the tax base, on town services. So a lot of thought went into it, and I'm comfortable with the decision that this is the best option for the town at this point. So appreciate the opportunity to participate.
This is Jim Elcock. I would echo what Patrick said. I've lived in Westwood, I guess, 33 plus years or so, but we're a 128 community. We are surrounded by, fabulous health care, medical clinics, whether it's BIDMC Needham or BIDMC Milton or Norwood Hospital or whatever. But all the things that Rob had said, 120, Westwood's always one of those towns that people are taking a look at for future development, and whether it's because of our school system, our demographics, our rich history, it's our proximity to Boston, our housing stock, whatever it might be. We are finding a lot of people are looking at Westwood as a 128 community and kicking the tires to see where there might be an opportunity to participate. And I think by having the town be proactive and really understand that we want to put some guardrails on what's best for the town and all the people who live in the town, by identifying 2 areas right on 95, right on 128, 109 and University Avenue respectively. I think with the right governance involved and boards involved, I think whatever comes our way, we'll be in a very position to never lose control and to make sure it's a robust dialogue where we can, be proactive as we are doing today, but then also reactive to whatever comes our way. And until we have done this, I think we were exposed. And I think the committee did a nice job, and I applaud Abby and Nora and the town for being this thoughtful.
Thank you for working on this. Heather, did you want to have anything to add, or actually?
Are you talking about Heather Sawitsky?
Yeah, I saw you in there. I wasn't sure if you were involved in this or if you were.
No, I'm counsel to Fox Hill Village. And I'm with Tony Amico.
Okay. So that's a big. It's so you are in this zone. So did you want to speak about kind of your perspective on it, or?
I think Tony Amico is prepared to speak to this. Maybe not.
There, I think he's.
Well, I'll speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, and we did review this overlay with our Fox Hill Village Board of Directors, which are 9 residents. And, there was a lengthy meeting about this discussion, this overlay, and the group felt as though that, we've been very pleased with what's in our neighborhood now for the last 30 years. It's a great first-class office building, quiet operation there, very minimal traffic in and out. And they were all opposed to having any kind of possibility of a hospital at that site, which would really change the entire character of Fox Hill Village in the entire area and really bring in a lot of overnight traffic and a lot of overnight activities. We were definitely opposed to having any hospital on this site. And even the same thing goes for a substance rehabilitation treatment facility. So, and they spoke on behalf of all the residents as well.
All right, well, thank you. Anybody else? Is there anyone else who wants to ask a question? Any board members have other questions? Raise your hand, or anyone who's any of the attendees.
Tony, can I ask a clarifying question on the feedback from your board of directors or your residents? So understand certainly the concern over the difference in traffic and noise of a hospital relative to the office building that's there. That is there's probably a significant difference in the traffic and noise related to substance treatment facility that would be in an office building or something along those lines relative to a hospital. Are those two different in your mind and in the minds of the folks that you spoken with?
I think if there was better definition of what would be in that substance rehabilitation center or treatment facility, there's a better definition of what type of facility or operation would go there would be helpful.
Abby,
What type of clinic?
Can you pull up the actual definition as we had drafted it?
Yeah.
Because
So while Abby's pulling that up, the definition will be broad, very broad, because that's the intent of the bylaw. Right now, we are not protected by not having mentioned or described what a substance rehabilitation treatment facility is and where it could go and under what conditions. So this proposed bylaw change adds a definition for substance rehabilitation treatment facility, and it makes it a special permit use. And it proposes, in this version, making that special permit use allowed within the ARO, this portion of the ARO that's under the medical facilities overlay district. So it would cover the Fox Hill Village property, and it would cover the Meditech property on Louderbrook only. Those would be the only properties that could be considered for this. So Abby, you have there's the definition. Substance rehabilitation or treatment facility is a building designed and used for the diagnosis and treatment of human patients for substance rehabilitation and or treatment. So what we have right now, without having that definition, without having any area where it's proposed, we're left open. So if someone comes to the town and proposes a substance rehabilitation treatment facility, they would go to the building commissioner, and the building commissioner would do one of two things. Either he would say, it's not a defined use, it's simply prohibited. And then that decision would be appealed to the zoning board, who would have the option of either supporting the building commissioner's decision opposing it, or overturning his decision and allowing it. Whatever decision comes out of the zoning board would then be appealed to court on either side. The other option is that the building commissioner can look at the zoning bylaw and determine a use that's very similar to that. And one of the reasons why we settled on the area where we did is that the ARO district, not just Louderbrook Road and Longwood Drive, but also the East Street ARO district, both have nursing homes as permitted uses. And a nursing home is very similar to a substance rehabilitation treatment facility in the effects on the surrounding neighborhood, the size and intensity of use. So the concern was that a substance rehabilitation treatment facility could be determined to be equivalent to a nursing home and could go there anyhow. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we had a special permit process in place that would require that a substance rehabilitation treatment facility would be considered under very specific terms. And this is where we developed the medical facilities overlay district special permit and put criteria that the zoning board of appeals would have to consider if that use went in. So I think we have to look at where we are today, what the potential exposure is, and why we're proposing what we're proposing. And then also consider whether there's a different way of doing it. And that's up to this board to consider. We had the working group go through all the options, and this was the option that the working group felt was the most effective way of maintaining control.
So Nora, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the definitions are to capture the potential use. Like you wouldn't be able to regulate away, like you couldn't say a substance abuse treatment center, except it doesn't treat substance abuse. You couldn't.
You can't further define that, right? You could
really. You're trying to cause the definition to be clear enough so that it doesn't get confused with another area. Like as you were saying, we wouldn't want something to come in and say, well, this could be the same as as a restaurant, or it could, it has. So the definition, you're not going to be able in the definition to make it so limiting as to exclude something you didn't want to have happen. But you want to make sure if you have that it's clearly defined somewhere, right? I mean, that's
right. We tried to make it as broad to cover the whole use, and then the specifics of a proposed use, if one ever came to be, in order for a use to be proposed on either of the two properties that would be considered, if town meeting accepted this proposal, and they zoned the property this way, there would just be those two properties. Fox Hill Village and the Meditech property are the only properties that would be within that zone that could propose a substance rehabilitation treatment facility or a hospital, as the way this is written right now. And in order for that to happen, the property owners of one or the other property would have to be willing to sell it or lease it for those purposes. And it's my understanding that neither of the property owners have any intention of doing that, which also adds to the attractiveness of this selection of sites. But if there was a proposal that came forward for either property, for a substance rehabilitation treatment facility or for a hospital, that proposal would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who would then apply the Medical Facilities Overlay District special permit criteria. And they would look at the size of the property, they would look at the way it's developed, the traffic, the lighting, and they would even consider fiscal implications. And so they would be looking at not just the effect on the immediate neighborhood, but on the town as a whole.
So
And
you're
unless
saying-
they found that there were no negative effects, they would have to deny the special permit.
So it's still, once even, there's a different standard of like, does it qualify for this area? But then even after that, you can have a degree of, there could be one place that maybe has no impact and it's easily approved, but they could deny something that has a big impact if the criteria. And so do we have criteria in this that would guide the ZBA to, or is it going to just be like, oh, we don't want a substance abuse center?
So that section 9.8.8 that Abby has on the screen says what the Zoning Board of Appeals would have to find in order to make a decision. So a special permit for any of the MFOD uses allowed pursuant to this section shall be granted by the Board of Appeals only upon its written determination that the proposed use, subject to the conditions imposed thereby, will not be contrary to the best interests of the town and the neighborhood in view of the particular characteristics of the site and of the proposal in relation to that site, including but not limited to particular aspects of the proposed facility design and operation and anticipated implications of the proposed development and operation on the town's resources and fiscal position. The board may impose reasonable conditions which it deems necessary to safeguard the surrounding properties and the town, including but not limited to security requirements, noise controls, payment in lieu of tax agreements, limits on hours of operation. The board may require additional reporting and renewal of an MFOD special permit where it finds such reporting and renewal is necessary to effectively monitor the facility and to adequately protect the interest of the neighborhood and or the town. So this gives a little bit more leeway than the ZBA would have under a general special permit. It gives specific requirements of things they can look at, including giving a limited time approval to a use that has to be readdressed after a period of time and after the facility has been monitored, so that if any problems arise, then you have to go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals and renegotiate the approval to make sure those areas are addressed. It has a specific reference to security requirements and noise controls, as well as payment in lieu of taxes. And that's a significant difference between this special permit procedure and the existing general special permit procedure that, for instance, a nursing home would fall under.
Well, and I think it's important to emphasize this because of the previous idea was that it would, if something, it would go to the ZBA and they would, and then they could judge this and give it up or down. But here we have, there are teeth. There's teeth in this. There's specifics about what they need to evaluate. It gives them tools to truly evaluate whether something's going to be good or bad for the neighborhood. I think adding that's even more critical than just defining a location, is that here's a rubric to be applied to something. And so again, more hoops to jump through. If you're trying to prevent something, it's holding them to a higher standard. So I think that's worth emphasizing as being different from what previously we had.
Nora, in addition to all of this, didn't we discuss that it would also have to go to the planning board for a site plan?
Yes. Any development would have to go to the planning board for environmental impact and design review. That would be part of it.
So it's going before both boards for approval on various levels.
If there was a proposal, yes, it would have to go before both boards.
Dave, Heather's had her hand up for a while. I can empathize.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
So I just wanted to let you know that we were aware of the additional oversight and conditions that the ZBA could impose on it. I think part of the issue that the board struggled with was the fact that the definition is quite intentionally very broad. And of course, I believe that a number of the board members immediately had images come to mind of a methadone clinic with people lining up every morning, and they felt quite vulnerable about that. They appreciate that you have tried to give them some protections. I think they feel as though they're a very vulnerable population, and they were very concerned that it would have a significant negative impact should this ever happen. I think they are also concerned about the fact that it's a very changing time in terms of medical office building uses. During the pandemic, that building has been really almost empty. And there is some concern about the future as to what that will hold for that property. And that was another concern that they had. They appreciate Meditech as a great company, and they understand that Meditech doesn't have any interest in this right now, but they were taking the very long view as to how to protect the future of their site.
And that's our concern as well, protecting the site. And we believe the site is unprotected right now. We believe it's exposed, and quite frankly, the most exposed properties in town are properties within the ARO, because nursing homes are permitted use there. So we believe even if the building commissioner were to deny a use and the zoning board were to uphold the building commissioner in that denial, there's potential for this to be taken to the courts and have a court overturn those decisions and allow a substance rehabilitation treatment facility, more likely than a hospital. I think a hospital could be determined to be different than a substance rehabilitation treatment facility, but because that's a protected class and we don't have the ability to deny it, if we don't provide somewhere in town for it to go, we think there's exposure, and we think the exposure is most significant on these properties.
So I understand, and again, I think the board was understanding what you were trying to do in terms of protecting the town. I believe they felt that if there wasn't any such protection or an area that was determined to be the only place where this could go, it would be more likely than not that this kind of a facility would not end up in the ARO district. So they felt quite strongly about it. I believe some of the members of the board will be at the public hearing to express their own views on this. It was a very lengthy discussion. It wasn't an immediate rush to judgment, but they felt on balance that this was not in their best interest.
That's it's good to hear that, because the history of this discussion, it has been a challenge. I think the more we talk about it, the more people are very concerned about the negative impacts of things. And we're, as Nora is saying, this is trying to protect when there is no protection now, but it's still hard. Like every discussion we've had about this, a lot of people are concerned that as you bring this topic up, it's attracting this, or that it could happen. And so I don't know, I'm curious, and I'll ask a hypothetical, or just like, did the topic of helping people, people who actually need these services and all, like how did that topic come up as in the discussions and all? Because I know that in some of our hearings in the past, no one wants a methadone clinic in their town, but there are a lot of people who need substance abuse treatment. And so how does that play out in a discussion? And I don't know, like if that came up in the working group or just kind of what the
That absolutely was discussed in the working group. I don't think that's necessarily was discussed in your board meetings at Fox Hill Village, but that was discussed in the working group, that this is a needed use. There are difficulties in a town as small as Westwood with providing this use. There are no properties in Westwood that are not somewhat adjacent to residential uses. I don't think we're at all surprised that residents of Fox Hill Village don't want to see these uses in their neighborhood, just as we were not at all surprised that residents of other neighborhoods don't want to see the uses there. We're not looking to bring these uses into town. We're looking to provide a format that allows us to control where they go if they ever did come to town, and that puts the uses in a place where they are least likely to go due to the value of the property and the protection of the owners who are not interested in developing their properties this way. So I know I have spoken to Howard Messing about the Meditech property. And I know he's also spoken to Tony. I believe he spoke to you, Tony, before you.
Yes, yeah, no, very good conversation, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not something that he has any interest in developing, but he too feels that they are currently exposed, and that that anything we can do to maintain town control is to everyone's benefit. So if not this location, then where? I think that's the question for the board to consider. I don't think the option of doing nothing is the right option. I don't think it was the right option last year when we had to step aside because of the COVID restrictions on town meeting. We did what we had to do. I don't think it was the option the year before where the board chose not to go forward because there were objections on another proposed site. We need to address this. This is a concern that will not go away. And
where was the objection of the other proposed site?
The previous proposal was for both ARO districts and the entirety of the ARO districts. So not just your building and Meditech's building, but the yellow building at 101 High Street as well. And also the other Meditech property at the East Street Rotary. So it was covering the entire ARO district, with the thought that nursing homes are permitted in those districts, and this would be a use that would be similar to that. And so the way of monitoring it would be similar. This time around, we went with a more streamlined use, and we added the medical facilities overlay district special permit requirements, which we had not addressed in 2019. In 2019, we were proposing it just under general special permit requirements. So we tried to be a little bit more thoughtful and more controlling this time around.
If there were a way to disentangle the two, currently the hospital and the substance abuse, and we continued to have the substance abuse in the Louderbrook ARO with this overlay, and we were able to create a different option for the hospital. Is that something that you think your folks could get behind, given all of the protections that Nora has just laid out? And it sounds like there was ample discussion around that. I'm just trying to see, given that we know it's not a good thing to have this exposure just hanging out there, we need to find a solution. And so how do we find a solution that is the greatest good for everybody involved, given what we know about the property owner's intentions currently, and the different intensity of the uses that we're talking about? And I guess that's a Tony, Heather thing to ponder.
Yeah, I hesitate to speak for the board because I hear what you're saying, but I don't think I can speak for them. That wasn't something that was discussed.
Would you say their opposition is equal, at least equal for hospitals and substance abuse? Or is one more opposed than the other? Or are they opposed to one more than the other?
I don't know, Tony, can you answer?
I mean,
that?
I know they were 100% opposed to the hospital. There were a couple board members that that did have more questions regarding the substance abuse at the substance rehab center. So I would say it was definitely no for a hospital, maybe slight possibility for the substance rehab.
Okay.
And given the discussion that's been had here tonight, do you think that there would be any more appetite for that with greater understanding of the protections that this would afford?
It's going to take a lot to persuade probably the other 7 that were opposed to everything.
We did have a conversation with them, and I did explain the difference between the discretion the ZBA had under its general authority and the discretion it had under this proposed amendment. So they were informed of that. I think that probably we can let them know that that's something that you're interested in pursuing with them, and those who come to the public hearing may be able to shed more light on their thinking.
All right. Any thoughts? I'm thinking of. I'm remembering how some people said that they would prefer the risk. They were the last time when this was raised, and people living near the Meditech location, and people said, well, they would just rather the risk be borne by everybody, just let everyone share in the risk. And that's not what everybody said, but it feels like as we pick a location, of course, no one wants to be near something that's probably an undesirable use. And so it just keeps coming back to that. But as Nora has repeatedly said, it's trying to craft something that will protect things. It's just, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. So we'll have to listen to what people have to say at our public hearing, and pull in all that input to, in addition to what's been collected here, and see how we move forward.
What I just keep thinking about what Nora mentioned, that somebody who is interested in opening up a clinic, such as what we've been discussing, is going to look for a lot of things. And those things are easy access on and off the highway for the people, a ready-made place to go. I know Fox Hill Village has no intent of subletting some aspect of its square footage to this. Meditech over on East Street has no room for that. They have no appetite for that as well. But what is sitting there without these protections that we talked about is an office building right there that we would have no control as to whether or not they move in. We would have none of the controls that Nora talked about that the ZBA could utilize. Without these things, they can still move in. Just because we say, all right, we'll go back to the drawing board. They can still move in there, and we have nothing to say about it, as we've indicated, them being a protected class. We have very little control as it sits. And that Meditech building, in my eye, is an attractive place for a naked town like us right now, with no control. So I just keep thinking about that. If we can control it, then we're so much farther ahead of the game. So that's
Chris. Ironically, an office building would be a very difficult conversion, and it has to be all or nothing, because you'll never have a multi-tenanted hospital or multi-tenant. Actually, Fox Hill Village. Yeah, but if Fox Hill Village has the right bedrooms, dining room, amenities that you see turned into these type of hospitals, extended stay, short-term stay, eating disorder places. And not that Fox Hill is going to do that, but really what they would like is what Fox Hill Village has provided, not what Meditech has provided. They don't want an office building. They want a room with plumbing.
So,
and just to repeat again, Howard Messing is clear, and he's coming to your hearing next week to say it publicly. Meditech is not looking to sell or lease for either of these proposed uses.
So if you look at where the substance abuse facilities have gone around the state, what they've done is they've picked off closed nursing homes that were pretty close to properly zoned for substance abuse. And some towns tried to retroactively stop them and they couldn't. And that's kind of the position we're in. We don't have the closed nursing home. We did have Westwood Lodge, but you saw tonight, that's now 40 condominiums. So that's gone by the board. But without protections, we're exposed.
You're also seeing, Pat, hotels and motels.
Yep.
And you know, that sector has been hit badly, and you're seeing hotels now be converted into residential in Boston, in some of the secondary locations. But when you go out to 128, 495, the Berkshires, Cape Cod, whatever you might be, you're right. Those single-story and two-story properties are being repurposed for some of these things.
And they're already zoned for a quasi-medical use, so the residents can't do much about it.
Nora, I don't know if do you know anything about the proposed in Dedham, there's a Substance Abuse Recovery Centers of America proposed near the Dedham Mall on Washington Street. And there was a ZBA hearing this past week, but they requested a continuance. Do you know of other things like that, or kind of do you know if what's?
I don't know all the details of that, other than the fact that it was by special permit and the special permit was continued. The special permit hearing was continued. I don't have the details of the proposal.
And Dave, I saw an article, and I believe they're trying to use the old Manhattan Bridal Shop right there on the corner of Washington and Route 1, which is an enormous building. I don't know what it's like on the inside, but, and I don't know what their thought process is, but if they're thinking inpatient or outpatient or both.
All right. Anybody have any comments? Mike, do you have any thoughts on this? You were here for the last round of hearings.
I still feel the same way I did 2 years ago. We have to define a zone, and we have to do this. We have no choice.
All right. Anything else anyone wants to add?
I just add that the bylaw is not just about substance rehabilitation and hospital. Those are the two new uses that are being added, but it also clarifies medical centers and clinics and Office of Healthcare Professionals to distinguish one from the other. And what that does is that we're replacing the definition or the term Office of a Doctor or Dentist with the term Office of a Healthcare Professional, which is the term that's heretofore only been used for University Station, but because of the way it's defined in the bylaw and not allocated, it's questionable where else it goes. So we're replacing the Office of Doctor or Dentist with Office of a Healthcare Professional. We're making that an allowed use everywhere Office of a Doctor or Dentist is now allowed, which is in every commercial district or by special permit in the general residence district. And then for medical centers and clinics, it's another term, it's defined in the bylaw. We're making that only allowable at University Station and nowhere else. And the difference between a medical center and clinic and an Office of a Healthcare Professional is a question of scale. So an Office of a Healthcare Professional can be an office, either a single practitioner or a practice of multiple doctors or healthcare professionals in a single building, whereas a medical center is something more along the lines of the Brigham and Women's office building at University Station, which is multiple practices of different offices. So we're trying to distinguish the two so that a full-blown medical clinic doesn't end up on Washington Street or High Street or in the general residence district, whereas a simple office of a healthcare professional could continue in those uses. So that's another important consideration. And one of the reasons why that's important, other than just the character of the area and the size of the facility, medical centers or clinics are more often or more likely to be nonprofit. And so there are tax implications with that as well. So we'd like to try and keep those within University Station, where we already have a means of addressing pilot agreements.
Yeah, just one more thing. I want to agree with Mike, I think, about but we also, the thing is, we can as a board decide it's the right thing to do, that we have to do it. We can do our best job, but it still has to pass town meeting. It still has to be something that 2/3 of the town will support. And so, that's why I keep pushing on this and kind of it's not just, we have to figure out how to listen to people everyone has so many concerns about this, and we've been struggling with it because it's going to require, it's not something that is going to just be, oh, we have to do it. It's got to be like a clear, people have to be comfortable with this if it's going to get 2/3 of a vote to pass. But I think this process has helped to engage more people in planning this, and that's definitely good. So we'll have our public hearing March 1st, and we will move forward. Anything else anyone wants to add on these zoning amendment items? As the hour is late, is there anything else on the agenda that we need to address this evening? Abby, we don't have the minutes, right? So.
Right. No minutes. You also have that notification about a public hearing tomorrow night in Dover about the comprehensive permit that's proposed for the 39 apartment style units. If you have any comments, we could send comments to that. I think the concern was just what was proposed in terms of traffic mitigation off of High Street.
Yeah, I mean, if we do any traffic studies, I think you have to, if you're going to include High Street, you got to include Hartford and what that does up High Rock and down Dover Road as well, and through Conant, and because there's a ton of traffic. It's a conga line every morning through that Conant neighborhood up to Summer Street to get at the light to make the left.
All right. Is there any further action anyone would like to take? Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, a roll call vote. Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Ms. Conant.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, and we are adjourned for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
For